Привет, добрый вечер, and welcome to this evening's live stream. I am, as you can see, if you've been following these live streams, in a different location, not in the normal Odesa setup. I've been traveling. I am currently in Chișinău in Moldova. And on tonight's live stream, I'm going to discuss the destinations that I am helping my clients with. One of them is right here. See a little flare on the camera. Wonder if that's something I can cure. No, I think it's just a flare with the light. Anyways, should be fine. Last week, unfortunately, with the air alerts in Odesa, the audio on this camera got muted every time there was an air alert. So that's why, and there was nothing I can do. I had to restart the live stream. It was very disruptive. And for guys who weren't live, trying to watch that or replay is a problem. So I'm going to repeat the theme of last week's live stream, but there will be some new information. So even if you watched the last week, you should get some value out of being here again. And if you're new to this channel, my name is Conor Klein, and I help high-level men with relocation and lifestyle in a region I dub New Europe. And that's based in the region between Germany and Russia. I had the premier channel for a high-level lifestyle in Ukraine between 2020 and 2022. Unfortunately, then we had the invasion, the Russian invasion, and it is kind of split between Ukraine because I'm there quite often, and I help my clients just to want to go to Ukraine. Normally, they are guys who have a significant other from Ukraine, normally wife or fiance, and they're still going there buying real estate, getting visas. But most of my clients, I help them with the alternatives, and it's not actually the entire region of New Europe in reality. Since I've come up with that term to describe it, I have a video about it. I'll link it down below in this live stream's description. I basically help my clients with a small number of countries: Moldova, Kazakhstan, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. Maybe at some point, we'll go back to Romania, a country I spent a lot of time in about a decade ago, and maybe to Prague at some point. For now, they're the countries that I specialize in. So if you are interested in visiting, but more importantly, if you're interested in spending more than 3 months out of the year in any of those countries, then this is the channel for you. Because in preparation for tonight's live stream, I did review the content on YouTube that is aimed at people who want to do that, go to these countries, and there is a complete dearth of good information. Also, respect to relationships, dating, as normally a guy going to a country like Ukraine or Moldova or Poland, it's also very sparse. There isn't much made. That's why I often refer to the Ukrainian bride business still, because that is one of the few genres that still exists on YouTube that has any sort of commentary on relationships in this region, say between someone who's come from Western Europe or North America or for somewhere else, and they're in a relationship with a Ukrainian or a Moldovan or a Latvian. There's almost nothing, a little bit about Poland, but still it's very little, and in general, I'm making some comments about that. So the format of these live streams is that I give a presentation and you can write your questions and your comments down below, and we'll come to a Q&A session afterwards. A little bit of housekeeping as always. I am in Moldova, and actually I inspired a guy to move here. He's been a viewer of the channel. He actually invested in my Moldova guide. So that is one thing you can get down below, as I say in these live streams, my Ukraine guide for visiting Ukraine during the war, and then my Moldova guide, so the insider guides. There you will get something you cannot get on the internet. The AI hasn't figured it out. AI can give you a good short summary of the history, logistics, and that's all included in the guides. But what it cannot direct you towards is the hospitality, going to the cafes, restaurants, bars, clubs, shisha lounges. It cannot figure out which are the best ones to go to, because I use it myself when I want to go somewhere, like when I go to Latvia, what I'm wearing here on myself on the polo shirt. It's absolutely useless. You'd be better off not even asking it, because it cannot really distinguish other than looking what are going to be basically the tourist traps. So I spent over 4 summers here in Moldova going to, I mean, I'm going to say at least 100 restaurants, but it's probably more than that. In terms, if you add up all the cafes, restaurants, I really did hardcore research, and it was thoroughly enjoyable. to do, so I can save you months of having to actually go out and figure out where are the best spots to go to. So grab the guide down below. It will save you just a huge amount of time and direct you towards my favorite places. Same for Ukraine. In the Ukrainian guide, I should give you my favorite places in Kyiv, in Lviv, in Chernovtsi, Uzhhorod, and Odesa. And in the Moldova guide, it is here in Chișinău. Not sure anyone is planning to go really anywhere else in Moldova. Tonight's theme, as I said, will be giving you an overview to allow you to figure out here on the free content, basically here on YouTube, which cities or countries that I help my clients with could be a good fit for you to visit or to relocate to. Even if you're not planning to relocate, you'll probably still get value out of a live stream like this, because I have visited these countries quite regularly. I advise guys about moving here, so I deal with the cultural integration, the language, relationships. Most of the guys are single when they first want to come. They often end up in a long-term relationship with someone from the region. And then the legal side, I worked as a lawyer for many years, and I may have in the future maybe return to that at some stage. Let's see. So I help my clients also with getting visas. Investing in real estate is also quite popular, and even opening a business or being involved business-wise in the new community, new location you're going to set up. So those are the themes that I deal with. And yeah, I think overall the big value is, like, if you go yourself, and this is something I faced back in the day. I was working as a lawyer in Brussels for many years. In Belgium, worked in private practice also at the EU institutions. And I loved coming to this region. Also going to dive a little bit deeper into who this region is for, who it's not for, maybe at different stages of their life. But one of the issues I faced at the time is I would come here, had a limited amount of time. I wasn't working remotely. Or I did at some point as a lawyer, but that was kind of at the not the norm at the time, unfortunately. Maybe things have evolved in the legal profession since. It was pretty hard to convince people. It's quite a conservative profession. It's quite hard to convince your boss that you could just hang out in Warsaw or Kyiv back in the day, or Riga, and do the same kind of work. I think with COVID, it became a lot more accepted. So I only had a window of 2, 3, 4 weeks maximum ever to come to the region. No one in my social circle, or at least it was very rarely, wanted to come with me. At the time, no one wanted to come with me. Some of them came later on, and even someone actually worked in the region. I remember some of my friends. But so I always had to go on my own. I was learning. At the time, I did learn eventually pretty good Russian. Since then, I've learned some of the other languages in the region, like Romanian and Belarusian and Ukrainian. But when I used to come, I basically didn't have a social circle, didn't really know anyone. Of course, you can meet some other people when you're traveling, maybe a fellow traveler, but no one was really close to. So it's basically Billy no-mates, and I had to figure everything out. And it was a lot of time. It was very inefficient. It took me years to learn a lot of lessons. And this channel didn't exist. There was no kind of, I mean, there was YouTube, but it was very, I guess, in its infancy at the time. We're talking over 10 years ago. So having someone who could mentor you, in a sense, either directly, because, you know, you could have, I could have hired someone similar with maybe gone through all the mistakes, and having coached other people and having that wisdom that I could have tapped into would have saved me a lot of time and money, and definitely a lot of misplaced emotions. Even though figuring out yourself, obviously that's rewarding as a journey to a certain extent. But if you're trying to reach a goal and you have a limited amount of time, it's not great. And it was a combination of having learned from those mistakes that allowed me to reach my goals. And eventually I ended up being able to spend most of the time in this region and creating a social circle and living definitely a great lifestyle. I know with the war in Ukraine, it has put a lot of people off this region, and when I'm giving my presentation, I'll also give you an update on what is going on here, both in Moldova and in Ukraine, since I've been in both for the last couple of months. So some other things that if you can keep the questions coming. I will come to them once I've done my presentation here. As I say, in this region, if you scratch your nose, it means you're going to drink alcohol. I actually did have a meetup this afternoon, basically, but I restrained myself and limit myself not doing the typical Irish thing of drinking when I have something that I have to do professionally. So I did have a client who was here. He was actually in my videos even from a couple of years ago, just prior to the invasion. He was like second to last client I had before the invasion in Ukraine, and he's actually married to a woman from Zaporizhia. So he was on his way there. He stopped over in Odesa, and we met up and had dinner. And it was quite interesting to get his feedback. So I'll also be relaying some of the anecdotes from that. One thing I want to discuss or put as a question for feedback: I do have a second channel about geopolitics, where I deal with the Russia-Ukraine war. I have a background in geopolitics, international relations. I studied it with a focus on this region, so Ukraine, Russia, and the broader region, former Soviet Union. And I speak the languages. I spent about half the time since 2022 actually in Ukraine. So I decided to put that about a year and a half ago on a separate channel. Maybe I will switch back a little bit of that content onto this channel. I find that the geopolitics channel hasn't grown fast enough, and if the war ends, I was actually interviewed for another channel, and I was asked that. I can't remember if it was actually in the video or it was just on the call we had afterwards, that what am I going to do? I'm going to continue with geopolitics if the war ends, and probably that's unlikely. It might be something to do with, it's definitely not if that geopolitics channel doesn't grow immensely. So if you'd like to have more of that content back here on the main channel on live stream, where it's more like a public service where I give you updates about what's going on, rather than on a second channel where at one point I was producing almost a video a day, then let me know your thoughts there in the chat, since you've come obviously into this live stream. Also, I may expand a little bit the content outside of this region and try to keep it somehow with a nexus. Because clients often invite me to hang out, say in Western Europe and somewhere like that. And then, I don't really feel as compelled to go, because I think, well, other than taking a holiday, I can't really make it relevant to what I'm doing. Obviously, a holiday every once in a while outside the region is also good. But that might be something I do by the summer. I actually might go to the south of France. I'll try to maybe include people from the region, like Ukrainians who live there, or other people from the countries I deal with, maybe get their comparisons. That's one idea I have, so that might be coming up. As I said, if you're new to this channel, I had the premier channel for lifestyle in Ukraine between 2020 and 2022. It was the time of the COVID epidemic and the lockdown, so Ukraine was super popular, especially for people who had remote income, because in Ukraine it wasn't as lockdown was basically almost irrelevant, I would say, after the first few weeks of the COVID, once we kind of had some sort of idea what was going on. And prior to that, I dealt a lot with, between 2018 and 2020, with Belarus in Ukraine. It was a lot more about partying, actually a lot more about partying and dating, really, and nightlife. And since 2022, and now in 2 days, on Tuesday, it's going to be the 4th anniversary of the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. I've been focusing on a wider array of countries, as I said: Moldova, Poland, Kazakhstan, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia is where I've been filming, and Romania. I did make one video in Romania. So definitely here on YouTube, if you're interested in this region, then this is the channel for you, because there's not really nothing else out there. I did do a good review. I have a lot of notes here for today to make sure I hit on all the different points that I want to get to. Also, the channel, I will focus a little bit more on events in the region and maybe the higher end of things. I also had great discussions with my client about, what kind of content interested him in general, and what, because he's a client. So we'll also focus a lot on more kind of like maybe upper scale hotels, more gourmet restaurants, and more exclusive experiences going forward. So you have that to look ahead to. And as I always say, for the last few weeks, last few months of these live streams, I will have more content coming from Kazakhstan pretty soon, Latvia, and from here, Moldova. A lot of footage, and a lot of cool events and parties that I went to in particular, and a lot of attractive people, including, because I looked through the footage, 2 reigning national beauty pageant winners for their countries, actually, when I looked through it, because it was part of, just the setup with clients that we were socializing in those milieus, as they say. So is there anything else from a housekeeping point of view? I think that is probably it. If you were interested in my guidance in person, then I have my New Europe experience. It's the rebranded Czar experience. Czar, not the best term in large part of this reason. Nowadays, unfortunately, with a wannabe Czar in the Kremlin wanting to reconstitute the Russian Empire to a certain extent. So in conjunction, whilst this wasn't really an issue, I think in 2022 and 2023, it just seemed a little bit outdated in terms of branding. And having discussed it with many of my clients who go to the different countries with me in the region, they're like, yeah, it doesn't really have the same vibe or connotations that it did like back in 2019 and 2018, unfortunately, with this Russo-Ukrainian war. And if you're interested in my guidance in person, we will go to a city that we agree on. You'll have my encyclopedic knowledge, my wisdom, my knowledge, my connections, my crew in many of the places, and we will gonna have an unforgettable week in the region. It's really a way to save yourself a lot of time, have an unforgettable time, and go out and meet the interesting and beautiful people of the new city that you might be considering either relocating to or spending a lot of time in, or you just want the experience. I do have clients that want to just go because they're like, I want to go to this place and I want to go with you, Conor, because trust you. I've been watching your content for a long time, and I know that I'll just get a lot more out of the trip and not be Billy Nomads trying to go there on my own. So they also hire me. It's a little bit less of the profile nowadays than it was back in 2018, but all that good stuff. Anyways, by application only. I don't accept everybody. It's an exclusive clientele. Everybody goes through a screening process, so you can apply for that down below if you were so inclined. I did also have an interesting consulting call. That's also an option if you want to just tap in on a call and not go in person together. And it was with a Western European entrepreneur. It was also quite an interesting conversation. I will refer to it a little bit when I'm talking about the country that he was most interested in and the region. And it's here on my Polish shirt because it was a lot of interesting stuff came out of it. So you can also learn from that conversation here on the YouTube channel on this live stream. So also my link for my consulting is down below. So I'm going to just very briefly speak about Ukraine. I'm going to focus in this live stream more on the alternatives that I help my clients with. Ukraine, I've done many live streams over the last few months since the summer with respect to life in Ukraine. I've been since 2022, I've filmed not so much the vlog style of content like I used to do or what I do also in the other countries. It didn't really seem to be the best investment of my time, especially with this war. I will probably change that actually this year and actually film a lot more in Ukraine. I think we've come to that point where I think a lot of my clients will also want to come back in spite of the Russo-Ukrainian war. But I made a lot of content. I'll have those linked down below as well. If you want to go, maybe you've missed out on them or you're new to my channel, then you can go and review that, especially if you're considering going to Ukraine. The statistical chance of being in the wrong place, the wrong time, when I put it into ChatGPT, is like 1 in a million per capita per day. So if you're in a city like Odesa or Lviv, where the population is about 1 million, it's really a 1 in a million chance every day that you will be in the wrong place, the wrong time. It's probably even less in Lviv, but we'll take Odesa. So it's not a huge statistical risks. I was having a drink earlier this afternoon with they're always Danish businessmen. I seem to know a lot of these places, but there's also one here in Moldova. And he was saying that, because he's been to Ukraine a few times since the war, the extended invasion happened in 2022. And he said it's more dangerous to ride a bicycle in Copenhagen with accents than it's actually to go to Ukraine statistically. So that puts it in perspective. The real issue is connected to what caused the muting problem on last week's live stream with this theme. That is error alerts and the psychological impact coming from that. Like, you don't sleep as well as you would otherwise, because often these air raids sirens go off. I guess you can just ignore them, but often, like when I'm in a desk, I can hear the air defense and I'm not going to sleep. Anyways, it happens to be just when you're about to go to sleep, because we have curfew, which is Not as strict in, say, Lviv. It doesn't even exist in Uzhhorod. But in a city like Odessa, it's pretty strict. The curfew, so everywhere, with a few exceptions, if you want to go party all night, it is actually possible. Then you can't be out in the street until the end of curfew. But so you're not going to do that often. Just do the whole all-nighter until 5 a.m. So normally most places are going to be shutting down by 11. So you tend to already go home at that point. And then just when you want to go to sleep, air defense starts up. You see the notifications, and then, yeah, you make a decision about whether to go to an air shelter or not. But if it's really noisy, also for my client, he was kind of like surprised that it was that intense because he was staying in a hotel in the center of Odessa. It was actually super cheap. Not so surprising there isn't any real international tourism in Ukraine nowadays. And also with the weather, it was one of the coldest winters for a long time in Ukraine. So there was also very little internal tourism to Odessa in the middle of the winter. And he showed it, I think it was $54 for 3 nights in a hotel on almost the best location in the center. It's a hotel I would have thought would have been 3 times the price of that. So yeah, there are some perks if you come to Ukraine. But he was surprised by just the sound and the noise of the air defense because he was in the city center. It's not so far from the port in Odessa. So these things, like for me, having spent over 2 months in Ukraine straight without a break, it is a relief to take some time away from curfew and just having the air alerts go off. So that's what I'll say if you're going to Ukraine, and definitely go back and watch my other content. I have a couple of videos in the last few weeks as well about traveling to Ukraine in 2026. It'll be a really good resource for you. So that's what I'll say in general about traveling to Ukraine. Just in short, I have also some content about from the geopolitics side, what I think will happen this year. I'd say as an update, we see more and more that the war is unsustainable for Russia. Economically, their economy is in a lot of trouble. That makes me quite optimistic about 2027 in particular. We'll see what happens this year. And now one of the other things that's happened in the last week or so is that they have slowed down Telegram. It's a messaging app that's quite popular in the region across the world. I guess it's owned by Pavel Durov, who's originally from Russia. And the Russian government they're going to ban it from April 1st completely, but they basically throttled it, so it makes it pretty much unusual. Apparently also using YouTube is a problem in Russia. So that's a big sign that Vladimir Putin is worried about his citizens' ability to message each other freely. They're trying to force everybody in Russia to use this other app, Max. I won't go into great detail about this on this live stream, but that indicates that they are planning something that's going to be unpopular in the next few months. It could be that they're actually about to stop the fighting, which you might say, why would that be unpopular? It's because the ultranational Russia are going to be outraged if Russia pauses the fighting before they achieve their strategic goals. They're going to see Putin as a failure, so he would actually be worried about being overthrown, especially with so many, I don't even think he would demobilize the soldiers because they'll come back. You're going to have all these violent, psychologically traumatized men who are used to getting paid a lot of money. It's going to be a disaster. I don't know how he can stay in power and control the situation. And it's certainly a recipe for being overthrown. So that's one possibility. Probably more likely they're going to go for another general mobilization in Russia, which would be unpopular with the public, judging by what happened in the autumn of 2022. So definitely from the point of view of Ukraine, I feel more and more optimistic and positive that it's going in the right direction. Russia has issues with manpower. Even on the battlefield, they're now actually losing a little bit of territory. It's also connected with Starlink being turned off or being controlled more tightly, so the Russians can't use it, unlike before. And their economy is just in a lot of trouble. So they can push on by making very unpopular decisions, but put it about 50-50 in 2026 that we're going to see a pause in the fighting, at least a temporary pause in the fighting, and I would put it up to 80% for 2027. Doesn't mean the war will be over necessarily, but without a black swan event in Russia, but definitely it's a time to feel more optimistic. Maybe you're watching this before I get on to the other countries, thinking, why would people go to Ukraine with the war going on? It is a place where there are great opportunities, and especially if you take advantage of the first mover effect, the fact that so many people aren't going. It's like what I said as a little hint with my client who was there for personal reasons. His wife was from Zaporizhia, but the cost of the hotel was basically for nothing at the moment, which won't be the case afterwards. But if you were planning to buy real estate. We also discussed it quite a lot because he was looking in different cities in Ukraine, just thinking about whether it would be good investment. Also was discussing it today with the other Danish businessman. That is the thing. The price of property will almost certainly go up quite considerably as asset appreciation post-war in Ukraine. Now, of course, there are risks and obvious ones that Russia might blow up your apartment in the meantime. They may occupy, which cause all lots of problems, but that is also factored into the price. So a lot of guys who have a reason to be in Ukraine, like their wife is Ukrainian, maybe buying an apartment now in their hometown, especially because they would have the local intel. But there are amazing deals, obviously relative to what the price of it could be in the future. So that is one reason. Other guys are investing in the agricultural sector. That is going to be enormous, especially with Ukraine on a pathway to joining the European Union and actually being part of the common market. Under the current rules, which will almost certainly be reformed before Ukraine joins the European Union, Ukraine would be the biggest recipient of EU aid for the agricultural sector. Its economy, its share of the agricultural sector in Europe is going to be that strong. So it's really behemoth economically. Obviously, the defense industry, for unfortunate reasons, also a huge industry in Ukraine, and there's a lot of synergies and foreign investment coming in now because Ukraine is at the cutting edge, both Ukraine and Russia, especially with drone warfare, and a lot of countries going to want access to battle-tested technologies like that. Unfortunate that that's one of the industries that Ukraine will become a world leader in for tragic reasons, but it is what it is, and that's another sector along with obviously real estate, people investing in real estate. I would say those are the top three things that guys are investing in. So other reasons people have emotional connections, they have partners from Ukraine they want to go visit, or they just want to support Ukraine, so there are reasons to go. Cost of living in Ukraine is also a lot lower than in other countries. There has been a bit of inflation in the local currency, but it's also lost a little bit of value versus the euro for sure, because I see it when I pay for stuff. I get not just hryvnia, but also euros up on my phone. And that means the price level is about the same it was in 2021. And obviously for rent, it's actually even lower than that. So whilst prices have been going up everywhere with inflation across the globe in the last, say, 5 years post-COVID, for sure, it hasn't. The prices in Ukraine are pretty attractive. That's one reason also to go. And in terms of, I'll address the whole relationship thing when we discuss later on a little bit about the Ukrainian bride business and their now use of AI. I think is the next level, something that you would expect. So if you are planning to go to Ukraine, just a short summary, statistically, as long as you're not going anywhere near the front lines, not going to be exceptionally dangerous. Touch wood that me or you who's watching is never in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the real thing is going to be psychological. I've seen what clients that I've brought, the few clients I've brought since 2022, that, it is a little bit of a jolt to them to realize where they are. Very interesting for the right kind of guy who wants to go and is actually interested in seeing what's going on in Ukraine and wants to support Ukraine, of course. In terms of logistics, yes, you just need your passport as long as you have a citizenship that gives you visa-free every 90 days, every 180. It's going to be nearly everybody who watches these videos, so American, Australian, or you're from somewhere in, I think almost everywhere in Europe except for Russia and Belarus, you should have visa-free, and a lot of other countries, and that's all you need. Everything should work, your cards, your phone, what else are you worried about? Being able to withdraw money, there's money changers everywhere. So the big thing is whether the electricity goes out. I was very lucky in Odesa all winter. It only went out a few times. But, in Kyiv, because Russia targeted, in particular, the capital, and there were many people who were out proper running water, heat, or electricity for part of the winter. Now the weather is getting milder. Presumably, Russia won't see as much value in blowing that up for now, at least until next winter. So probably that will improve. But my own personal experience in Odesa wasn't really, it was a problem for maybe a couple of weeks, and otherwise where I was staying, it was not a big issue. But just be aware of those things. Check always the latest updates before you go. And that's what I will say. It is still a place that I do bring some clients to, but it's obviously a very specific niche. Now, the main part of tonight's live stream, as I get to, is we almost hit 30 minutes, but it is what it is, and it's a long format here. And I touch on lots of things, and we have a little bit of an interaction in terms of the Q&A. So the country I'm in at the moment, Moldova. If you look on YouTube, with the exception of this channel, which I'm quite proud of, because I was also discussing it earlier when I was meeting with this friend of mine who's a businessman from Denmark. Basically, the channel with the most positive coverage of spending time in Moldova on YouTube is yours truly, Conor Klein, New Europe Experience, because there's no local YouTuber here who seems for any sort of longevity documents life in Moldova. There were a few that did it, and then I guess they got disinterested or they emigrated. Actually, a lot of them emigrated out of Moldova, so then they weren't here to film the content. But if you look since 2022, I did have some videos back in 2019. I was here with my client at the time, Philip, who I'll mention when it's relevant in tonight's presentation and in the Q&A, because there's a lot of interesting things that he said me back in the time, back in the day when we were here in Moldova and other places that I think are still pertinent to the conversations that I have with clients and with you here on YouTube. So other than that, and the odd positive video, most of the content produced about Moldova on YouTube is a form of poverty porn, basically. Pioneered by Ben Rich from Bald and Bankrupt. He made a super famous video here. It was probably about 7-8 years ago at this point, where he pointed out a lot of issues resulting from the endemic corruption since independence in Moldova, like things not being repaired. And that video got a lot of views, and so many travel vloggers come here and they just film a few things that look awful and pretend that's what Moldova is. It's not remotely representative in 2026 of what the experience of coming to Moldova is. It is a country that borders both Romania. It's sandwiched between Ukraine and Romania. It's quite small. The population is about 2.6 million, I think, officially nowadays. Capital Chișinău has a population of about 650,000, so not a big metropolis. It's also a little bit hard to get to because the airport is a bit limited. It's already at capacity. So, and there are a lot of Ukrainians using the airport because the airports are closed in Ukraine at the moment. So with this war for over 4 years, well, on Tuesday will be 4 years. So it's probably, if we leave aside Russia and Belarus, because I don't know how much tourism there is nowadays, it's probably the least, or in Ukraine, because I don't know how tourists we can say actually travel to Ukraine. If we leave out those countries that are either participants in war or quasi-participants like Belarus is, it's probably the least visited country in Europe. Doesn't have amazing architecture. It's probably got the worst architecture of any capital city in Europe. However, that means it does not have mass tourism, and it has still a lot to offer depending on what your interests are. It is basically very similar culturally to Ukraine. The national language is different. Is one of the main differences we'll say here. The official language is Romanian. Official language is Ukrainian in Ukraine. Russian is widely spoken here in Moldova as part of the Soviet Union. I would say, yeah, most people in Chișinău are going to be bilingual between Romanian and Russian. In southern Ukraine and in eastern Ukraine, it's also bilingual. Most people speak both Ukrainian and Russian. In the rest of Ukraine, it's really more and more monolingual, I would say. Some people are bilingual. Most people speak Ukrainian. So it does have that kind of overlap as an experience. The food is pretty similar to the food in large part of Odesa Oblast. The people would say maybe they look a little bit different to Ukrainians, but they're pretty similar, even though they speak Romanian, and obviously they have a lot of connections with Romania. Moldova was part of Romanian in the interbellum period, so between World War I and World War II, and the national language is Romanian here. So you would expect to be maybe people to look Romanian here, but I think they look kind of in between Romanian and, say, Ukrainian in general, which is where it's located. And basically, the lifestyle here, especially in the summer, is very attractive. The weather is really good. It actually gets maybe a little bit too hot, almost, and you don't have the seaside. You got to go down to Odessa or go to Romania for that. But it has amazing cuisine. It's famous for its wine country. Basically, you can't swing a dead cat in Moldova without hitting a vineyard, basically. It has just I've been to 10 vineyards that I document in my guidebook. I've been to some of them many times, really fantastic. And yeah, it's a place to come to if you are looking, like I just had this morning, brunch with a client This guy who invests in the guidebook is going to be a client. We're actually going to go to, in principle, to Ukraine together. But he actually moved to Moldova. I've had a few clients come here and spend a lot of time. For the right mindset or right person, it can be a very good fit. For other people, it isn't. The minuses are, despite the architecture in the city center, there are some historic buildings that are nice, but a lot of it was built by the Soviets. And yeah, they're not renowned for their amazing architecture. A lot of the city looks like a bit of a dump. Although it is being beautified quite considerably in the last few years, I think the big drawbacks are the fact that it's not a super big city. So if you're looking for a city over 1 million, then Chișinău is not going to be for you. I did have clients come here and maybe they were a bit peculiar. They complained about the delivery services. Oh, it'd be very hard to order stuff. I mean, how much stuff are you ordering in that you couldn't arrange in some other way, or it might take a bit longer? And they didn't like the shopping malls in the city center. They're nicer shopping malls outside of the center, but they didn't go there. But that was the feedback, and that's why they didn't really gel here. It is also, in terms of, say, the languages, most young people actually speak English, I would say, in Chișinău. However, they are not so open to tourists. So you're going to be put in the tourist box if you don't, in the beginning at least, if you don't speak Russian or Romanian, because they just think, oh, you're speaking English, so you're probably a tourist, even though the country doesn't get so many tourists. So they're not so inclined to be that communicative, I guess, or that maybe that friendly. I don't think people are rude here in general, at least no more rude than in the rest of the region. There is a guy that had come up to me during the summer because he recognized my content from YouTube. I have some feedback from him because he spent a couple of months here, and he's a single guy, around 40, British. He works online. I think he was taller than me. He, aesthetically, he looked fine. It didn't look like he was, had some deformity or something. And he was interested in dating the local girls here in particular. And he didn't find it a great experience in Moldova, either to make friends, because he didn't speak the local languages. He was hanging out at, co-working spaces. And it seems to be a bit of a tough market. And then he moved to the Philippines, so he's just gotten on. He wrote me some messages, and he's just said that there, even though they weren't as good looking in his opinion as women here, certainly I would agree with that. They were just a lot more interested in him. He is white, so that was kind of the experience. He found it very easy. He could speak in English in the Philippines, and he had all this value in terms of dating, and he's told me he wants to get married soon, so this was a high priority for him. So unless you're willing to, I think the main message out of the conversation was that unless you're willing to invest a good amount of time in Moldova, if you come as a single guy, then it might be a bit of an issue. My client who moved here, who will come with me to Ukraine in the next month or so, he's not worried about that at all. He said it's pretty easy. People were super friendly. He invited me to a party on Friday. With his, it was like a lawyer's birthday, so it was interesting for me to go to. And I could see people pretty friendly to him, and he has learned some Romanian already before coming, but it's not like it's fluent or anything. And I think if you're kind of committed to the country, I think it makes a big difference in Moldova. And it's kind of like coming to Ukraine without the war, pretty much. It's not exactly like Ukraine. I'd say Moldova is Ukraine. And there are obviously differences, but even within Ukraine, there are differences between the regions. If you go to Lviv in the west versus, say, Odesa in the south, they're quite different anyways, I would say, even though they're in the same country. So within that kind of schema, you could say that Moldova is kind of, close enough to Ukraine in terms of culture and the experience of going there. Price-wise, if that's a big factor for you, it's also very attractive in Moldova. I used to say that it's kind of between Warsaw prices and Odessa prices. Actually, I think maybe I overestimated the prices here because I was looking when I was paying for things. It's got a little bit cheaper in the last year in Moldova relative. I don't know. Maybe the Moldovan lei fell a bit, but I didn't feel it was that much more expensive than Odessa. And Odessa is, probably as a city 1 million, one of the best quality for money that you're going to find price-wise at the moment. So definitely it's attractive. Your money will go further here than it's going to go obviously in the United States or Western Europe in general. But it's not like it's ridiculously cheap. It's not the 1990s, it's not pennies on the pound, but it is definitely attractive from that point of view. So can be a good option. It's not in the Schengen area, so if you have an EU, well, it's not in the European Union, so if you have an EU passport, then you will need a visa if you're going to stay longer. My client who's here is getting his visa and his residency sorted out. And yeah, he plans to spend a lot of time here and maybe even long-term, even live here. But we'll have to see in a couple of years how everything works out. So I would say that, yeah, talking a lot about investment and business. I'm going to be doing a series of interviews also with business leaders here, especially foreigners who've set up. And the trajectory is pretty good also for Moldova, not for the real estate market in the last year. The prices have actually, if anything, come down a little bit. It's actually because they changed the law. It's something I learned this evening, discussing it, that now you can't pay 100% in cash, and they went into the province of the money. So apparently that has meant that a lot of people were buying, I guess Moldovans in general, property here in cash. They haven't been buying that much since that new law came into effect, and you know the prices have gone up quite a bit in the previous year. So it's a little bit stagnant in terms of price. Obviously, a lot cheaper than buying in further west in Europe. It's going to be good value. And IT sector is reasonably big, obviously, even though it doesn't have as big an agricultural sector as Ukraine, agritourism, hospitality, also industries that are doing well. Is a candidate country to join the European Union. The target date is 2030. I think it's kind of a 50-50 whether Moldova makes it by then, but if they don't, they should make it by 2032. So we could see medium to long-term prospects for this country economically. Definitely very attractive. So that's what I would say about Moldova. Ukraine without the war, basically. Obviously, that's a little bit simplistic, oversimplifying just to make the point. But yeah, I'm just thinking one client that came with me who'd been living in Kyiv, and he was like, "Oh, this is like Odesa without the seaside." Basically, is how he felt when he came to Chișinău. So it's a country I've documented. I normally have my summer vlog that will be coming up next month. And it's a great time this summer. They have a lot of outdoor electronic music parties. Some of them are free, and then some of them you pay a cover charge. So that's a pretty cool scene, and I like electronic music. So for me, it makes it super cool to be here in Moldova during the summer. If you're single and a guy, then yeah, Moldovan beauty. It's not heavily marketed because it's a small country, so you're not going to pour. You know, back in the day, the scammy PPL sites, the paper letter sites that were scamming men online. They were investing all the money into Ukrainians with this whole image, and even before that into Russians. So Moldova was just too small, so they didn't bother marketing it that way, but it's pretty similar in terms of, I would say, values, and so probably some more on the conservative side for Europe in general. Not super conservative, not like crazy conservative, but a little bit more conservative on average. And yeah, beauty, I think people here are maybe a little bit shorter than in Ukraine, slightly, I think, on average, but it's not a huge difference, but definitely shorter than people in the Baltics, for example. And the look, usually brown hair, maybe a bit Italian, Spanish looking might be a comparison. That's what I would say, but with a mixture of, yeah, Ukrainians, basically, because that's the neighboring country. So next country I'll go to, there I bring my clients, is one that's come back in popularity. That is Kazakhstan. I was there in 2022 and 2023, and I filmed a good bit, made a vlog, and recently I was back in October there. We're there for the Almaty Fashion Week. I went with a client to it who was involved in the fashion industry. So one of my favorite places to go. Almaty is such an amazing city. You got the mountains nearby, and a city about 2 to 3 million people. You also have the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, where I will go later this year, probably in the summer with a client. And it is in Europe, technically. Kazakhstan, a small part of Kazakhstan, is on the continent of Europe. So Kazakhstan always tries to join every single European organization that let them in. For example, they play soccer or association football in the European divisions. So for the World Cup qualifiers or for the European Championship, Kazakhstan is there. Or for the UEFA Champions League, the Kazakhstani club, I think it's called Kairat, was even in the Champions League this year for the first time. So it is in Central Asia, but has a little bit of a European influence. It's like if you go to Almaty, Astana, it's probably going to be 85% ethnically Asian and about 15% European. Officially, it says in the stats it's more than 20% Almaty, but it can't be. And my friends in Almaty agree that there's a lot of people moved to Almaty from the smaller villages who are ethnic Kazakhs, who don't register, so the official stats don't take them in, because this definitely feels like it's less than 1 in 5 people, but maybe not 1 in 10. So that's why I think it's about 15%. It is kind of the link between Europe and Asia, so it borders with China, it borders with some other countries that are stands like Kyrgyzstan. You got Russia to the north. It is, if you look at Almaty, it's basically the commercial capital of Central Asia. The city itself, as I mentioned, has mountains, it has canyons, it has lakes, it has just amazing nature nearby. So if you're into nature, you would take years to see everything near to Almaty. It's pretty incredible, especially if you were to go across the border also into Kyrgyzstan. So it has that going for it as a style of life in the city. It tends to be quite warm in the summer and quite cold in the winter, especially if you go to Astana, the capital. It's on the steppe, Central Asian steppe. It is so bloody cold in the winter. I haven't been in Astana in the middle of winter. I've been in Almaty and it was really, really cold and a bit oppressive. But in Astana, it gets even colder. It gets down to minus 40 at times. And then in the summer, for about a week, it gets to plus 40 Celsius. So you have really extreme weather at times. People are super hospitable. It's part of Kazakh culture, ethnic Kazakh culture, to be welcome guests better than you would and treat them better than you would your own family, basically. They have this huge guest culture. So they are very open and friendly to foreigners, I would say. In general, I did see some, there's almost nothing on YouTube again about Kazakhstan, but there's kind of one of these passport bro guys who's quite vulgar, this black guy, and there was another Latino guy who went, but he didn't really say much about Kazakhstan. He was also a bit vulgar, but yeah. So apparently this African-American guy who went, and he's quite loud, he sticks out, and he is vulgar and very inappropriate for Kazakhstani culture, I would say, in terms of how he talks about women and whatnot. But he said he got hassled by the local guys. Take what you want out of it. I would be surprised that's a typical experience, as long as you're respectful going to the country, and which he wasn't in the videos at times. So that kind of indicated that he was a guy who's probably attracting a little bit too much attention. But in general, it hasn't been my experience. I never had an issue there. Crime and stuff. I should have mentioned crime. For some reason, it's a big talking point online. But basically anywhere in this region doesn't have a big issue with crime in terms of petty crime. Of course, there are certain things that might be higher than Western Europe, but it's pretty, like I think the homicide rate is a little bit higher, but we're leaving aside Ukraine and the war, obviously, in terms of that particular danger. But, being mugged in this general region, or the place I bring my clients, it's not really a big issue anywhere. Yeah, definitely not in Kazakhstan. I didn't really see much evidence of that, or ever think that that was the case, or feel insecure. And yeah, the downsides is that with Kazakhstan, it's a bit hard to get to. It's a bit far away. We always have to take these flights red-eye flights whenever I go on these trips with my clients. Level of English, probably pretty low. If you're hanging in a nice part of Almaty or Astana, and people are way high, you're at the exclusive places, then yeah, probably most people speak some English because the elite basically pay for their kids to have English lessons. So yeah, but if you were to go out, when you go outside of that, there's officially both Russian and Kazakh are official languages, but I've been in situations where the traffic police are there. They didn't speak great Russian, to be honest. It's a bit hard to understand them. They're very heavily accented. Once you go outside of the, Almaty, everybody speaks in Russian basically, or over 95% of the population of Almaty. They're actually changing the status of the Russian language in Kazakhstan. I had it written down as one of my updates. It's maybe a bit niche for most people, but to explain it, at the moment, the Kazakh is the national language. Russian is on an equal footing as the language, is the term of that's used in the constitution. But there's a draft change to the constitution where it will be alongside, which means basically become optional to put any Russian anywhere in the future. So probably, if we're taking a time horizon of 10, 20 years, then maybe a lot of people will grow up and not learn Russian, which is the case in Uzbekistan. Neighboring Uzbekistan, at times younger people don't really speak much Russian, and they don't speak that much English either in Uzbekistan. So it's really, for me, who doesn't speak Uzbek or any Turkic language that well, it's a little bit hard. So the struggle might be communicating with people outside of the waiter. There's probably going to be one waiter that speaks English in every restaurant. It's not going to be, go to the top club. Of course, they have staff to speak English because they do have some international visitors to that. My client who was with me last time, I think the other clients, they didn't really struggle. Although one of the clients from 2023 did speak fluent Russian. But the others, they got on pretty well. I think just was if you're in those really nice areas, it's probably going to be fine. But for long term, obviously, spending time, if you speak Russian or if you speak Kazakh, obviously, it's going to be a huge advantage. And of course, if you're not into anything to do with Asia, it's probably not the right place for you. Whether it's you're not into Asian people or culture or dating Asians, then yeah, it's obviously not the place for you. And some guys say that to me, and they say, "Oh yeah, it sounds great, but I don't like Asian girls." Well, then I guess it's probably not the spot for you. Teach their own. If you're more open to that, then it's going to be a great place because yeah, they have this hospitality culture. There aren't so many tourists who go there, surprisingly, because of the amazing nature, and the price point is quite attractive. It's not that different in price to being in Moldova or Ukraine. It's yeah, pretty attractive. Again, not pennies on the pound, but definitely one of the more attractive places to go to. Infrastructure is very good, I think, overall in Almaty and Astana. Not, you know, it's not third world or anything. It's pretty good. It's maybe not the same as being in, I don't know, Germany or Sweden or somewhere, but it's not that far off it. It's still pretty attractive. And yeah, because Europeans and Americans going there, it's normally, it's not going to be passport bros that much, except for this one guy who made some disrespectful videos and got into trouble with guys at bars and stuff. But beside someone like that, who's not that common in Kazakhstan, most of the Europeans and Americans going there, a lot of work in the oil sector, so they have white-collar jobs. And yeah, the Kazakhstanis in general are very curious about people from Western Europe. Most guys just want to have a drink. The worst that's ever happened to me is they want to drink lots of vodka with me, the Kazakhstani guys. A little bit too much, but I've never had any hostility from them. And the girls are pretty open and interested in, definitely in Europeans. I think all my clients who came with me to Kazakhstan were white Americans or Europeans, and definitely they were seen very positively. So I'd say Kazakhstan, again, pretty niche. So you got the natural beauty and the female beauty of the Kazakhstanis, basically, but maybe particular taste. It depends on what your preferences are. And yeah, it can also be a little bit harder to move there long term than some of the other countries I have my clients with, because buying property, you need to be a permanent resident, and yeah, it can be a little bit complicated to get a visa to move there. It's a lot easier to move to Moldova or to Ukraine or to Poland. That's actually not that easy for American, but if you're a new citizen, obviously you can move to Poland and the 3 Baltic states pretty easy. So let me move on to Poland. Keep your comments coming. I will come to them all at the end of this presentation. Poland, it is the de facto capital of this broader region, New Europe. It is the economic upcoming powerhouse. The juggernaut will be Poland and its capital, Warsaw. It's a city of 2 to 3 million people, very good infrastructure, like the metro and the buses and everything are pretty impressive in Poland. It is anything but developing. It is a developed country. I've said it many times in this channel. The prediction has been Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, loves to tweet about it. The prediction is that Poland will overtake Brexit Britain, and the train wreck that was, self-inflicted by the British public who voted for it, but they will be overtaken in terms of GDP per capita within the next decade. I think there's some claim it will be 2030. I'm a little skeptical it will overtake it by 2030, but by 2035, at the current trajectory, it is going to happen. And maybe I don't see any real resolution of Britain's economic problems because they left the European Union. I don't really see how that's going to change dramatically, even with a new government, to the Labour government. I think until they figure out some way that they're going to have access to the common EU market again, Poland will be on that pathway to overtake them economically. So if you think back 20 years ago, there were so many Poles who emigrated to the United Kingdom for better economic opportunities. I can foresee, unless there's some dramatic change, that a lot of Brits are going to be learning Polish and moving to Poland by 2035 because the economy keeps going up. It's part of Schengen. It's, yeah, as I said, the infrastructure is very good. Don't think Polish food is as good as being in Ukraine or in Moldova. I don't, like, we were actually joking today about Polish politeness, saying it ironically, because someone was talking about people not being super polite somewhere. I was like, yeah, like Polish politeness is what one of my friends said. Yeah, that's the reputation of Poles. Not the friendliest nationality. Maybe 20 years ago was different, but I've also felt a little bit that Poles are not that open to foreigners, especially now that they have so many coming in, so many tourists. so many people emigrating, especially with the Russo-Ukrainian war. They had 2 million Ukrainians come. I think they had an extra million Ukrainians come, and there was already a million Ukrainians there. We've had at least half a million Belarusians come as well. Plus now you have a lot of, I guess, digital nomads go there because whilst it's not super cheap, it's cheaper than in Western Europe. A lot of single guys, a lot of these dating coaches seem to all hang out in Warsaw. I don't know why. It's if you don't speak Polish, I rarely see attractive Polish women with foreign guys. So I don't really know what they're doing there other than hanging out with each other and pestering girls on the street maybe. But that seems to be the national sport of these, or the sport that's the pastime of a lot of these guys who go there, who are in that niche. And let's just say the weather is not that attractive in winter, but I think that's the broader region, but it's even less attractive in Poland. Just there's less sunshine, tends to be grayer. Same with the Baltic region, like Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania as well. Polish food not as good, but still, as a city, quite vibrant. It's basically the place, if you really want a place that's well over 1 million people with something going on all the time, then, although the nightlife is not amazing during the week in Warsaw, like it's good in the weekend, then Poland, and I think it's actually maybe a gateway city as well to the broader region, because you can go there, everybody's going to speak English in the city center of Warsaw. I think just in general level of English is quite high in Poland. It's not like Sweden or the Netherlands, but it's much of a muchness at that point. They do speak good English. However, if you want to integrate into Polish society and you want to have a long-term future there and make local friends, then you're going to have to learn Polish. It's a hard language. It's like learning Ukrainian or Russian, like pretty hard. It's going to take a few years. So, and almost no foreigners do that. So they don't really live in Poland. They kind of live in a foreigner bubble. For some people, that's fine. There was a guy who was commenting a lot on my videos. I met him in person in Warsaw. And he was quite hostile to the fact that I pointed out to him personally, like, man, you're not really interested in Poles in Poland. You're kind of just hanging out with other foreigners, and it's a temporary phase. I don't really think that you would live in Poland long term. And he was quite resistant to what I said. He actually has a girlfriend from Ukraine, so I'll give him kudos for that. And it's interesting, last year, it's kind of, and this represents a little bit on YouTube, the flip away from the hype about Poland. Now, he suddenly became less enthusiastic about it and basically agrees with me about, from his point of view, that it's not the place for him to live in. And actually, he wrote me last night from Cyprus. So apparently he's loving Cyprus. He's there with his Ukrainian girlfriend. So it seems like he said he made more local context friends. People are, it's like, yeah, man, Poland, it's not that kind of place. For me and my clients, what is interesting in Poland really, number one is the fact there's a lot of Ukrainians and Belarusians. They have really cool diasporas. They have a lot of cafes, bars. If you don't want to come to Ukraine with the Russo-Ukrainian war, Poland can be a great option. You can go hang out in Polish or Belarusian places in Warsaw. There's just so many great cafes, restaurants. Also, if you learn Polish, then Poland can be a very good place for you if you have a Polish girlfriend or Polish wife, or if you're a woman watching this, which is probably about 1% of my audience. Then if you have a Polish boyfriend, husband, it makes sense to go there, and it's a country definitely on the way up. You're not going to get in if you go now. Like coming to Moldova, say, you're not going to get the full value of the economic development starting from a super low base, because Poland's already quite developed. But the prospects are that it's going to keep going, at least for foreseeable future. So it's really going to become an economic power, so you can get in early. Price of property and stuff is not that cheap like you might think, because things have gone up. A lot of Ukrainians went there as well, have come and invested in real estate as well. So I think overall it's a good place. I think what's misrepresented, I've commented on this often on my YouTube channel, there are a lot of, like, we'll just call them MAGA migrants. Like, they tend to be a MAGA, or maybe they're not American, but they're pro-MAGA, that kind of mentality. A lot of them are pro-Russian. Why the hell are you moving to Poland? Outside of Ukraine, it's the country that's most hostile to Vladimir Putin and Russia. It's Poland. But they go there, they support Putin, maybe not openly. Well, they probably would get a lot of trouble if they were openly shouting and boasting about how much they love Putin every day while in Warsaw, especially if they were meeting with Poles. The president, Nawrocki, was associated with MAGA when he got elected. So a lot, they tried to represent that, move to Poland because, I guess, kind of like similar values. But they all then moved to Warsaw, and maybe a small number of them to Krakow. They should look up their election results. I think Nawrocki got about 30% in Warsaw of the vote. Like, wasn't he won because in the small towns people are way more conservative than the big cities. It's like a huge divide in Poland, also depending on the region. But Krakow and Warsaw voted heavily for the opposite candidate. Nawrocki is not very popular, especially if you're single and you think the women are going to share those values. He did worse with women, so than he did with men. So yeah, it's not like you wouldn't find maybe people who share the same views of you in Warsaw, but it's definitely a minority, right? So they misrepresent what the common experience is going to be, unless you go to a very small town in Poland. But none of these guys seem to go there or really want to live in a small Polish town of 20,000 people. Their people, depending on the region, are way more likely to be super conservative. So Warsaw is basically a pretty liberal city, I would say, in general. It's a bit like saying you're going to go to America because Donald Trump is the president, so everybody's MAGA. Giving a broad definition of MAGA in that case, like people voted for Trump. But then you go and you live in, I don't know, the gay area of San Francisco, for example, or somewhere where, I don't know what he got there. Maybe it was 20% of the vote, and you think that people are going to share your values. Like, yeah, you have to go a bit deeper to understand where you might meet similar-minded people. As I said, there are all these dating coaches and day gamers. They basically make a holy show outside the train station in Warsaw, pestering girls, basically. And they all seem to hang out with each other and talk up Warsaw. I just don't see the reason to be there for that reason. I don't think it's particularly good. Maybe it's better for these guys than being in Washington, D.C. or New York or somewhere, or London. Beats me why they're all hanging out in Warsaw. I don't think it's that amazing from that point of view. And it's also not super cheap. It is cheaper than being in a commensurate city in the US or the UK or France, but it's not by much. Like my flat white index, I basically pay about €4.20 at least for a flat white in the places I go to in Warsaw. And in Ireland, it's like in my hometown was €4.50. It's going to be like maybe Dublin's €5. And I paid €4.80 in Warsaw at a Belarusian cafe that was kind of hip. So yeah, it's cheaper than being in Western Europe, but it's not that much cheaper. Maybe 20% for a commensurate compared to a commensurate city like in Scandinavia. And that gap is closing because Warsaw and Poland is doing so well economically. I will say about these guys who promoted and they're super MAGA. When I say like they're MAGA in the sense that they also support Russia, right? And like in these polls in the US, vast majority of Americans support Ukraine over Russia. The vast majority of Republicans, or not the vast, but a majority of Republicans support Ukraine over Russia. It's only people who self-identify as MAGA who in the majority, not all of them, support Russia, right? So there's just this kind of segment. I don't know why those guys go to Poland at all. Maybe Serbia might be a better place for them, because I saw a survey that the only country in Europe other than Russia that they could do an opinion poll in, but I guess you can't even really poll in Russia. The only country that there was a positive opinion about Vladimir Putin was Serbia. So that was the only country. So maybe you would have better luck going to Serbia. But my experience in Serbia is also pretty hard to integrate there. And they just introduced, I see, compulsory military service for men until 27 in Serbia. That's probably not a good sign about the direction of political stability and maybe wars in the region in the Balkans. So yeah, that's just a suggestion. I don't deal so much with Serbia myself. I haven't been there for a few years. Some of my clients went there, especially in 2022 with the war in Ukraine. They were all disappointed. Some of my clients went there, some of my friends. It's also my experience back in the day in Serbia. I like Novi Sad, but Belgrade, I just really don't like it so much. So yeah, but Poland, who is Poland going to be for? It's going to be for guys that want to maybe have an easy entry into the region, in the sense that it's not going to be that rough going to Warsaw, in the sense the infrastructure is going to be really good. The economic prospects are obviously very good in Poland. A lot of people are just emigrating to work in normal jobs in Poland because the salaries are catching up. And you're in the region. There's a lot of Ukrainians and Belarusians. You don't have a war, at least yet, in Poland. I also think that, Warsaw as a city probably wouldn't be affected by the first wave in a war between Russia and, we can say NATO, but was Article 5 going to be honored by Donald Trump? I'm a bit skeptical personally if Poland or any of the Baltic states are attacked, but that's a discussion for another day. So it's good for guys that obviously like Polish culture, don't mind bad weather in the winter, or willing to go somewhere else during the winter. And yeah, want to, I guess, have a big city vibe, a bit similar to Kyiv, but a lot more developed, and no war at the moment, and lots of Ukrainians and Belarusians around. I guess that's who are for. On the in-person experience, a Silva client wants to go back to Warsaw, or wants to go to Warsaw with me, so I'm going to go there. It was very popular in 2023, but then the interest seemed to drop off a lot. But I think if you're interested in hanging out at the top Ukrainian and Belarusian places without risking going to Belarus or Ukraine, you can live that in Warsaw. And yeah, if you're interested in better services than you'll probably find in the rest of the region, and you have the money to pay for them, even though it's cheaper than Western Europe, then I think it's a good fit. Yeah, that's what I'll say about Poland. Then we have the hidden gems, which are Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So we're going to talk about Riga, a couple of Latvia, Vilnius, a couple of Lithuania. I've also been with a client to Kaunas, which is the second city of Lithuania, and Tallinn in Estonia, where I spent many months last winter. These are places, like in contrast to Poland. Lithuania and Poland are pretty similar architecture, the both majority Catholic countries, and also economically doing very well. Lithuania at the moment, fintech, very strong there. It's a growing kind of digital hub in the region. Poland is as well, and Warsaw as well, I must say that. And also you got Krakow, which has also got nicer architecture, I would say historic architecture, than say Warsaw. Vilnius, let's start with Vilnius then. City is not as big. I think that's one of the downsides if you're looking for a bigger city. So not going to be Vilnius. I think it's like maybe 600,000 people or 700,000 people live in Vilnius. And quality of life for that size city, very good. Infrastructure improving. Local language going to be hard, Lithuanian, but everybody is young, speaks English basically. And the difference in like, they basically speak more or less the same level of English in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Maybe better as you go further north, like Estonia, than it's going to be in Poland. But it's like only a small difference. The biggest difference is if you don't speak Polish in Poland, you kind of get treated as a tourist. People are not that open to you. Long term, you really have to learn Polish. Because the languages in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are pretty small, there's only between them, like I think about 1 million people speak Estonian, for example, and there's a few million people who speak Lithuanian. Whilst Polish, there's already 40 million Poles, plus the Ukrainian and Belarusian immigrants of there's a few million. They also tend to learn Polish. They kind of expect people basically to learn their language. Also, Poland was, at a Commonwealth, it's basically an empire of sorts, a kingdom. So kind of has that mindset of people should speak their language, not the other way around. Whilst in Lithuania, for example, they're very open to speak English, socializing and not speaking Lithuanian. Yeah, it's not perfect. I guess it would be expectation if you're living there for a long time, but I think in the short term shouldn't be so hard to integrate. You don't have lots of weekend warrior tourists going there. You don't have the dating coaches. In fact, I watched some of the videos from these guys just to see, because some of them said they were going to Baltics. I was like, are they going to now encourage a flood of guys pestering girls on the street or whatever in these countries? But no, one of them even said that so little happened that they weren't even going to bother editing up the footage. So I was like, okay, interesting. And that's what I see when I watch these channels. A lot of guys go to, say, Riga, or they go to Tallinn, and they really find it hard there. It doesn't have the big city vibe. Maybe it's not as anonymous as a city as, say, Warsaw is, where it's just so much bigger and people are coming. There's a lot more immigration to Warsaw than there is to Vilnius. Vilnius has a lot of Belarusians and some Ukrainians, but then it doesn't have so many immigrants from other places. So because of that, it's maybe people know each other more. It's more smaller social circles. I find people pretty open in Vilnius. It's the same actually maybe they're more open actually in Lithuania than in Latvia, because Latvia, if you speak Russian, a lot of people speak Russian in Riga, and it's a bit easier, I guess, to have that connection because I speak Russian. So for other people, they may struggle a bit in Riga, and definitely the ethnic Estonians, they're not very talkative. They're pretty taciturn in general. So yeah, I can see why you can struggle a bit, maybe to make local connections there. But it's a city that definitely is a bit maybe like coming to Moldova, where if you come for a weekend, it's going to be pretty hard to meet people. People are not really open to connecting with tourists or random people. Maybe Warsaw, it's a little bit easier because it's just a bigger city and people are a bit more open to that, even though I don't think the ethnic Poles are. Maybe there's just more immigrants in Poland. So I think that's interesting that none of them recommend it. My clients who come with me, say, to Warsaw and then been to Riga, they don't understand. They think it's the other way around. Why would anyone want to live in Warsaw and hang out there when they could go to Riga? Because it's just a better overall kind of quality of life. But again, if you want to be in a city over 1 million people, then you're going to go to Warsaw. So Vilnius, I would say another difference. People are super tall in the Baltics. So if you're insecure about your height, especially a lot of guys, for some reason, they tell me this, oh, yeah, I don't want, that's one of the objections I receive is, oh, I don't want to go to the Baltics because I'll feel small. It's normally guys who are my height, 178, which is about 5'10". It doesn't bother me. I happen to like tall women, and I guess the fact that the guys all tower over me is unusual. I'm definitely short in the Baltics, but yeah, it depends on your preference and how much that affects you. So a lot of guys complain about that. That's some of the feedback. If I guess if you're short or insecure about being not super tall, then it's maybe an issue. We can maybe refer to that about the looks maxing this clavicular guy and how much attention on men, especially it seems, in the core Angster are putting on their looks, which, you know, it's kind of debatable whether it's a good investment of your time. So anyways, Lithuania, smaller, not going to have mass tourism. I don't think the nightlife is super good in Vilnius. That's one negative. I think it's way better in Riga, and it's better also in Tallinn. There's a lot of Michelin star restaurants in the Baltics. It's kind of surprising. If you're into Michelin star cuisine, for small cities, Vilnius, Tallinn, and Riga are actually pretty good. I think there's almost as many Michelin star restaurants there as there is in Poland, for example. Yeah, I think it's a country, it's a specific, I guess, vibe. If you go to Vilnius, it looks kind of similar architecture, as I said, to Poland. And yeah, kind of the hidden gems, because it doesn't have mass tourism. Maybe a little bit during the summer, you know, weekend tourists coming, they all hang out in the same places in the old towns, especially in Riga, which I'll get to. Well, I'll go to Tallinn next time maybe. But yeah, they hang out in the old town of Riga, which is basically a tourist trap. And then all the locals and all the people in the know, the insiders, they go to a different part of the city where it's super cool. So let me go on to Estonia, famous for its e-residency, again, fintech, startups. It's kind of the startup hub of the Baltic region, I would say. It's Nordic Estonian. It is not Eastern European. It is Nordic with, I guess, a minority that speak Russian that you could say are kind of Slavic or Eastern European, maybe a bit more. But in Tallinn, it feels like being basically in Helsinki pretty much with, I mean, the immigration in Scandinavia comes from kind of all over the world. It's kind of multi-culti. Whilst in Tallinn, it's basically Ukrainians and Russians, basically, were the main people who came with a different culture, right? Because it was part of the Soviet Union. So a lot of people migrated, especially the end of the Soviet times, to Tallinn. They actually lived in newly constructed buildings, you know, part of the city called Lasnamäe. It was a bit of a ghetto. It's not terribly poor. I've been there. But yeah, when you go to nice places, most people are, I think, Estonian and speak Estonian. But you will have a Russian-speaking minority. If that's something you're interested in, I don't think it's particularly strong in Tallinn. It is in Riga, though. What else to say about it? Yeah, it's very basically like being in Finland with a bit of a different mix because of the immigration patterns, migration patterns in the past. Price point, I should say that it's a little bit cheaper than being in Finland or Sweden, but not massively, maybe 20% cheaper. Yeah, the weather in the winter in all these countries, not much sunlight. It depends on you probably want to go somewhere and spend at least a month and get some sunshine during the winter if you're living there long term. So that's something else to bear in mind. But during the summer, it's beautiful, very green. What else to say about it? Nightlife, good, but not as good as Riga. I'll get to Riga in a minute. Estonia is the country with the most models per capita. When I say models, I mean catwalk models in the world. So it's also got a very high incidence of blonde hair. I think only Finland and maybe Sweden is slightly higher. But basically, if you like leggy blondes because people are tall, this is a model beauty. This is country number one in the world. So Riga and Latvia, it's the place that I think is, when I'm asked if I where should you go as a single guy? Well, I would go to Riga in Latvia. It has maybe not technically the same percentage of per capita of models in the world as models in the country as Estonia, but because it's a bigger city, like I think Tallinn's only 450,000 people, and the metropolitan area of Riga is about like 1 million, because you got Jurmala on the coast, and I think they include that. So it's just a bigger city, a lot more going on. It's quite dynamic. It's the biggest airport in the region. And yeah, I think to go out, especially if you're single, this is where I would go. It's not easy. As I said, the kind of historic center is a tourist trap. That seems to be where all the foreigners go, or the weekend warriors, which is good because you want a barrier to entry if you're going to spend time there. You want face control that doesn't let other people in because it gives you more exclusivity once you figure it out. Yeah, good nightlife, beautiful architecture centers. All these cities have really beautiful old world architecture. Level of English, maybe not quite as high as in Estonia, as Lithuania, but it's much of a muchness. If you speak Russian, then yeah, probably at least half the city is bilingual, Russian, Latvian, maybe even higher than that. And yeah, it just has a very cool feel as a city, I find. Restaurants, food, also good. What other things important? None of these cities are particularly dangerous to be in. Yeah, I just think it's a super cool place. Yeah, it's big enough, but not quite Warsaw. So I would say, yeah, a single guy doesn't want to go to the mainstream places, has appreciation for very high levels of beauty, interesting. I think stylish women, definitely Riga in the region. What else to say about it? UNESCO World Heritage. Old Town, if you want to go there and look at beautiful architecture, I don't recommend you socialize in the Old Town. You need to know where to go with the insider, which is what my clients call me. So yeah, so what else to say? Maybe geopolitical risk, as I said, neighbor Russia, always a bit of concern. Latvia also allows you to get residency through a real estate investment. And the price of property is quite attractive. Population of Latvia has declined quite a bit since independence. I don't think that will actually be the long-term trend. I think at a certain point, because the economy will improve, there will be a lot of people who want to emigrate there. So you're going to get in before that wave happens. So of course, that's not 100% certain, but that's kind of the way I think it will go. If you look at Poland and now Lithuania's economy growing, it's a bit of a laggard Latvia, but it will eventually get there. The building Rail Baltica to connect. Eventually Helsinki with Tallinn to Riga, down to Kaunas. They have the line going to Vilnius and then down to Białystok and Warsaw. So it's going to be properly connected. As I said, it's like the main city there. So yeah, I can't wait to get back to Latvia. Although it's nicer once the weather gets a bit warmer than it is right now. But still, the nightlife is crazy in Riga, actually in the winter. When it's as cold as hell outside, it's probably even maybe the best nightlife of the year. I think people they need to get some sort of release. So they go a little bit wild. Yeah, are people open to foreigners? If you're of a certain high value, none of these countries really are places where a dating desperado from Western Europe. Actually, an interesting conversation in a cafe with a Moldovan woman who was into rugby. She even knew her sister plays it, so she knew the games that were coming up. It was kind of first time that's ever happened. But yeah, we were talking. She was asking me about like what's the experience for guys who come from Western Europe here who are single. I was saying it's not the 1990s, it's not 1996, it's 2026. Like women are not desperate here. If it's Moldova, and definitely not in the Baltic states. So yeah, if you're a guy who has high value, who's perceived as having high value, you will do even better in these places once you have your setup dialed in and you have a good local network and you know the places to go to. And yeah, you make investments definitely in the city and long term. I think you do very well there. It's actually the consulting call I had was a guy who wanted to go to Riga. And he was a guy who said that, number one, he didn't want to move somewhere just for the girls. Even though we discussed a lot about, like, is he single and he wants to really upscale his like successful women. He's obviously doing reasonably well. I mean, probably on an average male, he's doing extremely well, but he wants to go even higher. So that's why Riga was of interest to him. He's been to the region, he's been to Vilnius, and he's been to, I think he said he'd been to Tallinn. So we're discussing it, but he says, I don't want to go somewhere like he's been, I think, I'm pretty sure he's been to Ukraine. He told me he'd been to Minsk in the past, but he doesn't want to go to those places now with this political issues. He's like, yeah, that's not really, I'm not making the decision purely on that, but if we do a combination, interesting architecture, cool enough scene, and, you know, high level of education, and of course, attractive women, as all men like beauty, appreciate female beauty, or most men do, then you put all those things together, then yeah, Riga is really a cool spot. So that's what I will say in terms of all of that. Let me just give you some updates before I get to the Q&A. What's been happening? Let me have my live stream here. I can see your comments and your questions. Someone asked, actually, is there a discount for getting both the Ukraine and Moldova guides? Not sure if it's officially there on when you buy it. So maybe write me an email, Conor@conorklein.com. I think the OHMYTIN. Yeah, write me an email. I guess I can give you a small discount if you're going to buy both of them. Okay, very cool. Let me just give some updates to the region, and then I can give you some relationship advice and some of the conversations maybe, but maybe do that in a second part when I wait for more Q&A to come in. Developments the last few weeks, there was a big scandal with Romanian citizenship by descent. So, you know, I also looked at that for one client. We couldn't find relatives, and it was interesting that we're actually going to make him eligible for Romanian. Actually, two clients discussed it with. Just went too far back, or we couldn't find documents. But one of the clients told me that he was approached. He sent me something, said, hey, does this look legit? They said they will just get me a Romanian passport. I said, man, you don't have, we already looked for you. We can't find them. So they're obviously giving fake documents, right? This is not, and he's like, oh, okay, so it's a scam. I was like, yes, they are, well, in the sense that you won't legitimately becoming a Romanian citizen. So I also had someone reach out to me, it's Belarusian, and they weren't saying directly, but I felt like they were trying to figure out if I could help them get Romanian citizenship without it being legitimate, because I was like, hey, do you have ancestors from Moldova or from Romania? And they were like, no. So I was like, well, why would you get a passport then by descent? So basically there was a big scandal where apparently there were, and I'd heard about this actually in the past for Bulgarian citizenship, that it was an issue in Ukraine, that there was corruption going on, that people were basically, I think in the Bulgarian case, what I was told was by someone who was legitimately entitled to a Bulgarian passport and got it, is one of the issues is that they were changing the names or the lineage for people who were bribing them, willing to pay for it, and they were actually replacing the names of real people. So they were, say you had a grandfather who was not Bulgarian, but then maybe they put that person as being Bulgarian, or they change your grandfather's name and say that that was the lineage, and then the real person would go later on and say, I want my passport, and then it had been changed in the records, and they weren't entitled, even though they were really entitled to the passport. So apparently something similar was going on with Romanian citizenship by descent, and now it's been exposed, so they're basically going to cancel those passports that were basically bought illegitimately. So yeah, don't pay for that kind of stuff. And I would even say that the citizenship by investment programs, especially the ones that are in Europe, normally in countries that are not in the European Union, they're going to get stricter on that, because it's a way for Russians and Chinese who maybe wouldn't be entitled to a visa, they can kind of buy a, you know, if they donate enough money to, say, Serbia, they can probably get a passport and stuff. I think it's called citizenship by exception. But anyways, you're basically investing either formally or informally into no doubt a politician or some connected person is going to get a kickback out of that. And, you know, Serbia's not the best probably in corruption. Or there's several other countries like in the region that do this. So I wonder if in the future, there's already been cases, I think with Cyprus, that they took back some of the citizenships, they canceled them on, like, they were clearly like oligarchs who had been up to dodgy stuff, and some of them got their citizenship that they got through investment, they had them revoked. So I think that's going to become more an issue going forward. But definitely don't pay for, you know, someone who's going to buy you basically a Romanian citizenship by descent fraudulently. Don't do that. Moldova is going to build a new railroad to Iași in Romania that will then connect up with the rest of the high-speed network eventually in Europe. So that's a big development. The rail lines here in Moldova are basically non-existent. They're often the Soviet Union. It's pretty, but actually the railroads in Romania are already very unimpressive. It's some of the worst in Europe. So all of this in the next decade is going to be transformed, and the Moldovans are going to build a new railroad that will be European gauge, because the Soviet gauge was different, which is an issue also in Ukraine. So they're going to switch and they're going to build a new railroad. I think once the war is over in Ukraine, they will also build a high-speed rail from Chișinău to Odesa, and then you can go Odesa, Chișinău to Iași, and then into the rest of Europe. So they connect it up. So that's a development. If you're going to the United Kingdom, then you will need an ETA, basically a bit like an ETSA if you're going to the US. So you're going to have to get it pre-cleared. You're going to have to get it online before you take your flight, a few days before. So that's something that's new, that's coming in later this week in the UK. So if you are traveling to the UK and you're, I think it's, obviously if you're a British citizen, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're an Irish citizen, you also don't have to worry about this. But I think for everyone else who is visa-free to go to the United Kingdom from the 25th of February, you will need to get pre-cleared. It's called an ETA or ETA, I guess. Very similar to the ETSA and what the European Union will introduce for the Schengen area probably at the end of the year. I think it's called ETIAS. It will be called in the European Union. Very annoying. Do we really have visa-free if we have to go pre-cleared before we get on our flight or travel by train to, to the Channel Tunnel to UK? No. But okay, it's valid, I think, for 2 years or something like that, and you can do it online. It's probably going to be pretty quick, but just don't forget to do it because you'll be denied boarding. Moldova is also going to formally close and exit the CIS, that's Commonwealth of Independent States. It's kind of referred to more if you're in the Russian-speaking world. I know in Kazakhstan people still use the phrase, I think it's I'm thinking SMG, is that what they, I can't remember what the acronym is. The initialism is in Russian again, but basically it meant being in Russia's sphere of influence, kind of. Not as strongly as been in the Eurasian Economic Union, but Moldova is actually going to formally leave it. Ukraine obviously left it with the invasions. I think Georgia left it as well after the invasions in 2008, when Russia invaded. And yeah, the 3 Baltic states are never part of that club, even though there is a Soviet Union. But that's just something to indicate the waning influence that Russia has, and Moldova making strides to get itself away from Russia while it still can. As I say, Kazakhstan is downgrading Russian in the new constitution, the Russian language. Yeah, there's some idea that Ukraine, they might change how the EU works to be kind of concentric circle idea, which means that you could join the European Union earlier than normally the process takes, just so that you can get Ukraine and maybe Moldova formally in, but then they wouldn't have the same rights. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they will keep to the normal accession procedure, which means Ukraine will join in the 2030s, but I can't see it happening before then. Sweden is now considering joining the eurozone. That's a result of, a lot of the Trump policies. Although now his tariffs and his struck down has been unconstitutional, so maybe that's going to improve. But anyways, I think I mentioned that Russia has already limited Telegram. So that's not, why you would go to Russia at the moment, especially move there, kind of seems a bit crazy to me, as well as morally pugnant. Let me leave some of the other points for our discussion in the Q&A. So those are the countries that I'm helping my clients at the moment. So I can help you via consulting if you want to just jump on a call. Like a client I had last week, I wanted to go to Latvia and Riga, although we discussed the other options in the region. You can book that and we'll just jump on the call. There's a link down below. You see consulting. Obviously, if you want to have me as your mentor in person as opposed to virtually, then we can live the New Europe experience together, rebranded from the Czar experience for the reasons I outlined at the beginning of this live stream. And we'll spend up to a week together in a city that we agree on. You have to apply. There's an application form down below, so go and apply there. It takes a few minutes to fill out and give some information that make me understand if you're going to be a good fit for us to hop on a call and then potentially work together. And you will have an unforgettable time coming with me. And I think the majority of my clients are actually repeat clients. We go to several cities together, which is basically the best endorsement. I was thinking, do I want to ask my clients for testimonials? Like my client who was in Odesa, his wife's in Zaporizhia. We were talking about the marriage agencies and the matchmaking. His opinion was that when he came with me, he was interested in seeing Ukraine. He was recently divorced. He was divorced, and yeah, he came with no expectation or like putting to get married necessarily to find his wife. But that's what ended up happening. He came with me. There was another guy. We were in Kharkiv together. He's in the video from Kharkiv, and yeah, he met his wife. He actually dated someone in Kharkiv shortly, briefly, and then he met his wife when he was in Kyiv. So he felt that this whole idea of coming to find your wife and the matchmaking, it puts a lot of pressure on the guys, that they get very needy and they're very outcome focused. And yeah, that's definitely not the best way, especially if you come a short amount of time. This region, the guys do the best in general. And ironically, I love to say in these live streams, the foreign guys who run these marriage agencies, not all of them are run by foreign men, some of them by local Ukrainian women as well. They, from what I can see, the 5 that I looked at, that do this content in English, they all met their current wife or partner by living in Ukraine and basically through social circle or some form of that. But then they sell the idea that and some of them actually use matchmaking service and failed several times. I think 1 or 2 of the others did have a marriage out of it, which then failed, and then they met their current partner. So yeah, do what these people actually did themselves rather than what they try to sell you as an idea. But yeah, that's kind of what his feedback was, that he thought it was just like, it was more relaxed and it was more natural and he wasn't under pressure and it wasn't this big thing, and he really had an amazing time and made, lifelong connections. He also, normally I don't put guys together unless I think they're a good fit, but these 2 guys were a good fit together, so they become really good friends as well. So yeah, that's some of the magic that happens. Let me go to your questions and comments. So I'm going to say Omitin. Hi Conor, my friends and I, Southeast Asian and East Asian from the UK and US, are thinking of coming to Odesa in May. Anything we have to be aware of? Well, I think the obvious is there. There's still going to be almost certainly an ongoing war in Ukraine in May when you come. Watch my other content if you haven't seen the other live streams and the 2 videos I made in the last few weeks. They're the last 2 videos on the channel, and that will give you enough context, rather than repeating everything again here. I think just, be psychologically prepared that you're going to have air alerts, you're going to have curfew, and you may have drone attacks and rocket attacks. Very low probability you're going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Again, touch wood here. And yeah, it's great to see. I think that's going to be a trend. More people coming back to Ukraine in spite of the war. I kind of have this feeling since last summer, just by seeing some reactions, seeing more clients come back. Although most of them have a reason. I did have a client who came with me who currently doesn't have a girlfriend, or at the time a girlfriend, wife, or fiance from the region. And we went to Chernovtsi, then to Lviv. No, we went to Lviv, Chernovtsi, then down to Chișinău, and then eventually down to Odesa. And actually the guy who wants to come with me, who lives here, we're also going to go to Chernovtsi and Lviv. And had a few other clients who went to Odesa and to Lviv who were single. So yeah, I think it's going to be a mixture. And yeah, hopefully it goes well. Let me know how it goes. If you got a more specific question, then write it here in the chat. As I said, if you want to buy both guidebooks, probably a good combination. Maybe I should make that an offer. Maybe give a small discount if you buy both the Moldovan and Odesa guide. I don't know if that was an option. I know it offers you both when you click on the link. Anyways, the links are down below to both guides in the description. Paul says, in the title, did you mean MD and add, because AD is the code for Andorra, which is outside of New York? Well, I'm not really sure. What did I write in the title? Did I put the Andorran flag? Maybe I did. Maybe I just made a mistake and put the wrong flag. Thanks for spotting that. The symbol in the center of the flag for Moldova it's quite small on my computer screen. So it is indeed, I did indeed put the wrong flag. They are very similar. And well spotted. You could tell, even though it's tiny, that the emblem was different. So I just corrected that. I'm not sure if it updates for you, but yes, very good spot, Paul. Ozzy asks, ChatGPT says Riga, Latvia has the most beautiful women in Europe. I think I've answered that with my recommendation. That's why I'm wearing the polo. Statistically, per capita, there are more couple models from Estonia than from Latvia, but I would say that Riga, in terms of beauty and also the fact that they're stylish as well. And you know, if you put everything together, education, maybe personality-wise and values, obviously that's more debatable thing. That's more variable, but depending on who you are. But for me, Riga, one of the best cities if you're single. Personally, I think as a guy, and you have a certain amount of value. It's not the place to go to if you like you're. I don't know. I'm going to create a caricature, but if you're not getting any dates back home in, I don't know, city like some city in the US, in New York City, no one wants to date you, then is it going to be that different in Riga? Probably not. But if your guy has a good amount of value, then yeah, Riga is pretty amazing, I think. Have I noticed, Joshua, have I noticed the trend of great divorce? It is growing really, really fast. Do you mean that people getting divorced when they're older, like when they're over 50? Because I don't really understand what great divorce is. Maybe I need to look that up. Let me, we can look these things up on these live streams pretty quickly. Rising trend of couples over 50 ending long-term marriages. Okay. Do I notice it? No. Let me just close that. I'm on the wrong. Yeah, I don't notice it personally in this region, but maybe it's happening. The divorce rate in Ukraine, same in Belarus, same in Russia, same in Moldova, extremely high. It's higher than in the US and way higher than Western Europe. But, these dodgy matchmakers that keep talking about traditional values will make you think that none of that exists. But, divorce is very high because there are several reasons for that. Like people tended to get married younger before, not so much today, especially from big cities, but yeah. And then it's pretty easy to do as well, just legally. It's pretty easy to get a divorce, I guess. But also obviously things don't work out a lot for them. Ben says, I'd like to see you do a tour of the Adriatic coast starting in Trieste. I have been to Trieste. I think there's an Irish connection since I think James Joyce lived there at certain points. So there's a statue to him in the city. Anyways, that's a little bit random trivia for you. But yeah, I mean, it's a region that I went to and traveled at a certain point. Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, Serbia, even though that's not in the Adriatic. It's landlocked. Albania. But it's not really my region. I just felt once I got to like Moldova, even Romania, I felt more of a connection with the people and the culture than on the Adriatic coast. It's just not my spot. I was back in Croatia for a mastermind organized by my friends Ali and Jan at one point a few years ago. And yeah, I didn't really want to spend a lot of time there. It was a nice experience, but I wouldn't live there. And I'm probably never going to document it. But who knows? If you told me back in 2021 that I would be spending time documenting Moldova, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Warsaw, and Kazakhstan, I also thought, well, that's unlikely to happen. But, that's how things worked out. Yes, so Kurtland says, Bolden Bankman came out with a new narration vid about his expulsion from Russia. Did you watch it? Did I watch it? It sounds familiar, but maybe I need to just check his channel then. Let me have a look here. Bold and Bankrupt. Is this a new video from pretty recently? Bold and Bankrupt. I see it's from 1 day ago. I guess since I commented on his video his experience at the time, I will go and watch that. Thank you for pointing that out. So I haven't watched that, and I can give you my reaction. I don't know if I'm going to, I don't plan to make a reaction video to my full one. I just think it's too much time. It was something that happened in the moment that was newsworthy, and there was a lot for you to learn out of it if you're a viewer from his experience. So, but let me see. I'll go and watch it and then tell you. Omitten says, do women have problems with Asian men in places like Odesa? Would you recommend to get a table and do a pool game in Odesa? Well, I think if you're going to go socialize in May, summer season will be open in Odesa. Yeah, the beach clubs in Arcadia. You can get a table at like Ibiza club or something. My favorite club is not open, so yeah, you're stuck with Arcadia. But yeah, it will be good. Summertime, hopefully, again, touch wood, all goes well for you in terms of safety. Do they like Asian men? I think you said Southeast Asian. There aren't so many foreigners in Ukraine, so I guess I can't really say if they're gonna like Asian men or not, but there definitely won't be a huge avalanche of Asian guys this summer in Odessa, Mama. So yeah, why not try your luck and give me some feedback? I think it will be, yeah, there's just such a dearth of foreign men going there that you will have a good time anyways. Joshua asks, the median age for Eastern Europe is 40. Men don't want to date at that age. So is there super completion for women in their 20s or no? I think you mean competition for women in their 20s. Women don't want to. Okay. So I guess you mean that men in their 40s don't want to date women who are 40 in this region. I think when you mean Eastern Europe, you mean Central and Eastern Europe, so that there's super amount of competition from their 20s. Yeah, I don't think nowadays that there isn't high competition anywhere, probably on the planet, because the internet has made the world so much smaller. So one of the things that many people don't understand is the effect of the Dubai effect. And I should probably just call it the Dubai effect. Maybe that's worth a full video. It's like the number of attractive women with questionable morals that Dubai sucks out of like Russia or Ukraine or Belarus or Poland or other places is pretty phenomenal. I had a consulting client who, he actually married a Russian. Wow, okay. What can I say? It was before 2022. And he went recently to Dubai and we chatted there like about a week ago. And he said like there's a huge number of Russian women who've recently moved to the Emirates. It doesn't surprise me because economy is bad in Russia, so not as many rich men who are going to sponsor their lifestyle. We're talking about those kind of more gold digging types. So I just get on a plane and some Habibi probably sponsors their flight out there. And there's, yeah, so that then takes a lot of those kind of women out of the marketplace, should we say, if we want to say dating as a market. So that increases the competition for the remaining women who are attractive, hopefully with better morals in general than that cohort. Yeah, I think also the local guys, socioeconomically, the region is doing a lot better than 20 years ago. So local guys, it's kind of, there's a guy who actually wants to become my client because we discussed it. And he told me he wants to come with me on a trip, maybe even to Moldova this year, if not Ukraine. And we actually met in person in Tallinn. And he invited me to dinner. They had a table somewhere. And yeah, he didn't know anything about my channel or anything at the time. I just met him in a cafe. So I went and they were Italian speaking. Like some of them were from Switzerland. We're at this, it was kind of like a bar with a dance floor and they had a table. These guys, some of them were veterans of coming to Russia, to Ukraine. They were kind of in their 50s. They obviously were quite well-to-do, dressed well, but they were clearly suffering from this kind of like veteran hangover, I would say, in the sense that they were used to having automatic status by being Swiss or Italian, been from Western Europe, and that those days are gone. And the local guys, they've raised their game immensely in the last 10, 20 years. So you just economically, it's doing a lot better. There are a lot more prospects than before for local guys. So of course the girls don't think, oh wow, an Italian guy or a Swiss guy. Plus they have a lot more exposure. The girls travel more. There's the internet, there's Instagram. They realize that not every guy is high value in Switzerland. There's also guys who are losers there as well. So they're just not impressed by that so much. So those guys, I could feel while chatting to them that they were annoyed. And one of the guys even said to one of the girls, I think they had she invited because she was doing some work with some of them or something like this. And they were like talking down about the fact that she had a local boyfriend. She was like, what do you mean? What's the problem? I'm an Estonian boyfriend, for example. Because but I could see that it frustrated them because they thought, oh, she should be not dating a local guy, but one of us because we're so much cooler. So I just think those days are gone. If you're not higher value nowadays and working on yourself, I'll address that in a minute after go through these questions. Then, yeah, there's no easy places unless you go to the Philippines. Like the feedback I got from the British States, it's easier for sure. Go to a Filipino island, I guess, where maybe there's no real competition. I've answered the question about the guides. Ben says I'm happy that he's happy to date a 40-year-old, but he's in his 50s. I've seen a fair few 40-ish year old women in Odesa that are hot gym rats. Most have careers and grown kids. Yeah, also possible. I think that cohort, like people in this region, if we're talking about Ukraine and Moldova, who are now, like I'm 47, who are my age, compared to 20 years ago, they definitely take way better care of themselves. So again, even the older guys and the older ladies are looking after themselves better. Not as much as, let's say, in Western Europe or North America, for that cohort or that part of the population actually looks after themselves that's not obese. I should say this whole region, like obesity is not an issue. Most people are slim, and up until the age of 40 at least. After 40 maybe it's a bit different. But yeah, you do see that. My gym in Odesa, yeah, there are a lot of attractive women. Some are older who are at the gym as well, with these crazy gym rat bodies basically. So yeah, I mean, the world's your oyster, Ben. We already did a video together. You need to get over to Odesa, Mama. Timo asked me, is Kyrgyzstan pretty similar to Kazakhstan? No, surprisingly not. If you go from Almaty, which is a 1 hour flight, to Bishkek, or it takes 5 hours over land, because you kind of have to drive this way and then down, because there's mountains in between. It is very different. Bishkek is no Almaty. And it actually came with the conversation, because this businessman earlier was having a drink with, he wants to go to Kyrgyzstan. He wants to ride bikes there, which is a good idea, but Bishkek itself, it's polluted. I had a headache from the pollution. People are aggressive. It's violent. It's not as bad as it was the first time I went, which is over 10 years ago. It was a bit safer, but yeah, the level of everything is lower than in Almaty. Like Almaty is this like oasis of calm, development, beauty, friendliness, and then you go to Kyrgyzstan. It's just like, no. I went to some of the nicer places in Bishkek in the evening, and I saw girls having fights. Even the ladies were being very unladylike. So that's Kyrgyzstan. So yeah, it's just more underdeveloped. It's rougher. Yeah, it's not really my scene, Kyrgyzstan, but maybe other people enjoy it. Ben says, royalty in the chat. Oh yeah, with Angela leaving a heart emoji. How do I feel about Kyrgyzstan? Well, that's the second person asking me the same question. Interesting. So you're interested in Kyrgyzstan. Well, I've just given you a description. I'm not a huge fan. Gustav Peterson says, Привет. Привет. Добрый вечер. So keep your questions and comments going. And yeah, my email is Conor@conorklein.com. Write me an email there. It's down in the description to the video. So I wanted to discuss a few things that have come up since the last live stream. I already talked about the guy who went to the Philippines, who's British. Also, I had another Lloyd who was on my channel. I interviewed him during COVID. And because I'd met him randomly in Lviv, and he has a YouTube channel for learning English. So I gave him an interview, and then during the COVID, because he came to Ukraine, I interviewed him. He's now in Bangkok, and he said that the real man mindset, which you hear me talk about, at least back in the past in my podcast series, I talked about a good bit, works really well in Thailand. He says there's classical femininity, and yeah, it's like he said every meaningful relationship he's had has come from meeting in person or friends. So social circle, this is Conor's favorite, yeah. So there's some feedback about, another part of the world and social circle being the way to go. And I agree that, like as a guy, if we're looking at how relationships work, and if we're talking about when you're single and how appealing you are to women, like there are lots of things. As a guy, like women evaluate us on lots of different criteria, whilst men are lots more one-dimensional. We're not 100% one-dimensional, but men are just more visually based. And both sexes are looking at like basically to a large extent, the main drivers are the ability for the partner to produce and provide for offspring, right? So men look at women for fertility cues. Basically, we're going to be good at giving birth to children. I mean, put it on a very primitive level. It's a big factor of how we find them physically attractive, whilst women look at men more in a mixed kind of basket, right? So of course they look at looks, how you look aesthetically, but they also look at your status more, your ability to provide financial resources, and if you're a leader, because all these things ultimately meant that the offspring is more likely to survive. We're putting it on a very basic level. It's not the only thing, but it's like one of the main differences between how, in general, women judge men as a potential partner versus how men judge women. Obviously, men are more interested in casual sexual encounters than women are on average. It doesn't mean there are no women who are into that, obviously, but on average, men are more interested in that. So the good news is, as a man, there's lots of things you can work on. So in particular, if you're not a pretty boy, you're at a less of a disadvantage than for women who are not physically attractive. They've got to spend more time on that than, because men don't value women as romantic partners for their academic achievements or their ability to provide resources. It's not like there's zero men don't care about it all, but they care about a lot less than women care about that in men in general, if you look at it. So I would say that like there are just so many different elements you need to think about. One is, let me put it like this, right? So you can look at yourself, right, as kind of a product. So what is your perceived value? When women, when they look at you or they interact with you, how much do they rate you, basically, right? So what goes in that? It's going to be your physical appearance, your grooming, your style, your status, I guess, what they can tell about your financial resources, ability to provide, your social circle, because it's also something that's part of, I guess, your product as a person, right? What you're trying to sell. And what else would be in there? Maybe that's the product, I would say. And then you got to look at like the market. So are you trying to sell this? We're all personal brand nowadays. Are you trying to do it in person or online? I'm not a huge fan of online dating in general. I think that especially if you have a lot of value and you want to find someone commensurate value, then you're probably going to be more successful as a guy if you meet them in person. But for a certain number of guys who just want to date down a huge amount and just have lots of casual sexual partners and they're getting lots of matches on these apps, then I guess it's fine. And the reverse for women. So I think in person, that's kind of the market. And then you got the geographical market, like geomaxing, right? Maybe where you were living, maybe it's rural area, not much going on, not too many options. Maybe it makes sense to at least spend part of the year somewhere else where you're going to meet someone who's going to be more appropriate. Doesn't mean you have to live there forever. If you don't want to. Me, whether a single or in a relationship, I like this region the most in Europe. That's why I spend so much time there. But I'm a minority opinion, but this is a niche channel. And then you got the sales part, which is basically how you interact, how you communicate. You could say that's also part of the product to a certain extent, maybe, because it's hard to make clear delineations with a lot of these things, but they're all things that you can work on. I think personally, you can also say that your social media is also part of your marketing, because your Instagram in particular, or your online presence, mainly it's going to be Instagram, that gives you, is a way for you to communicate your value as a man, not just the way you look with photos, because you can have professional photos taken, but also you can display all those elements that are part of the product, like your looks, your social circle, your status, your ability to provision resources. You just want to look try hard and needy when you do it, or it's going to be in person. It's the way you interact, your communication skills, your personality, all these things come into it that allow you to sell. So they're the different elements you need to work on if you're going to raise your value. And there's just a lot of things to work on as a guy. And I think your ability to sell or the marketing is probably the most important part. More important than the product, but obviously it's way better if you're a good product. And if you're obese, this is hard to hide that. I mean, at the end of the day, that's something that you need to correct. But other things, yeah, if you want to put the emphasis, I think it's going to be in how you market yourself. Also super important is the location. That's why if you're single, moving to this region for a certain amount of time, great idea. As I said, both single and in a relationship, I like here anyways. But not everyone's going to be like that. Maybe it's just going to be a phase of your life when you are single. Thing is, you don't want to just come for a short amount of time, because you're going to put a lot of pressure on yourself, and just the more time you have, the more possibilities you will create. So yeah, over medium to long term, it works out way better than this kind of short time constraint. Fitness, grooming, style, all things you can work on. Building a social circle, really important. Your language skills also make an impact on this, your ability to communicate. Also, getting out of the tourist box is important in many countries. So, and your ability just even, talk to someone if they don't speak English, for example. So these are all things that fit into that in general. So that's what you need to consider in terms of self-development and raising your value. This region, the countries I go to, in my opinion, have on average the best looking women in the world. Maybe their values are going to, in general, coincide with yours. But as I talked about Warsaw with these guys who have, I wouldn't even call them conservative values. I think they have radical populist values. Like, is that really going to gel with most of the women in Warsaw? No, there's going to be minority women it would. But you're not going to a place where you're going to have the same values as the majority of the people. You're going somewhere you don't. You have the opposite, right? So, yeah, that's something that's quite individual. I think on average, probably if you're really a conservative or a centrist, for example, then this region is probably the best in terms of maybe on average having people with the same values. But even if you go to a city like Warsaw, I guess if you just hang out in some clubs where everybody is like right-wing populist, I guess you would find similar-minded people there in general. But yeah, it's not entirely clear. Like if you're a male feminist, this is probably not the region for you in general. But then you probably don't watch my channel, because yeah, radical feminism is not such a big thing in this region in general. Other interesting points. Keep your questions and comments coming there. Yeah, I think I'm glad. I said this on the deleted live stream from last week. I'm glad that I did not grow up with a lot of the dating advice on YouTube for men. Like in general, I think it's because I reviewed a lot going through what's available for this region. There's almost nothing at this point that's really of value. And most of it's either misinformation or just terrible advice. If you look at this, the latest trend, I even saw it in Piers Morgan when they brought on this guy Clavicular, who has almost no personality, is taking crystal meth and like using a mallet to break his cheekbones and having reset. I mean, this is like looks maxing, and it's just like been this huge decline in the quality of self-help advice for men, I think, of the last decade. I think you just have these people who are very sensationalist. They get a lot of attention from saying crazy things, who all hang out together. Like you have Klaviker, you had Sneeko, you had the tape twats hanging out together, and then singing Heil, playing some like anti-Semitic song Heil Hitler in the background, and some of them are black. Like even the Tates are mixed race. It's just like weird. You had Nick Fuentes with them, who says he's a virgin. None of these men really, other than the Tates, who are allegedly were trafficking, and they're still waiting to be tried on that. No, it seem to have any successful women. They're talking about stuff that's irrelevant, the red pill, the black pill, very little relevance really to being successful in that part of your life. Yeah, it's terrible. And I would think like if I were like 17, 18, would I fall into these like echo chambers and be consuming looks maxing from people like Clavicular? I think the newer generation gonna have a lot of problems. So, but yeah, even for older guys who are not 18 or 20, there's just so much bad information, and if you don't understand the field, how are you ever gonna filter through it? It's like really tough. Yeah, the people that get the most attention online. Also, when I was interviewed for this other channel, that he kept private the video for his, people pay him a subscription, so behind a paywall. But yeah, he said that it was a dating channel as well. He said like the people who were the best at dating get almost no views, and you have all these complete charlatans who get all the views. Like, yeah, man, welcome to YouTube in 2026. Unfortunately, just the algorithm pushes people who have sensationalist and maybe have popular ideas, or I don't know what it is, but it's really hard to find good quality information. So yeah, this focus now on looks maxing. Do looks make a difference? Obviously, but are they that important that you should be smashing your your cheekbones? I guess madness. This guy looks like he's no personality. I saw a few clips where he's interacting with women. He's terrible. And yeah, now he's on Piers Morgan, so even more people are going to give him attention and listen to him. He's making a lot of money. These people are making a lot of money. I mean, that whole crew, at a certain point, some of them tried to get me to to hang out in with their motley crew, but I wasn't impressed at the time. I guess if I was willing to spread misinformation and just be sensationalist, then I guess I'd be a lot richer. But yeah, I wouldn't be helping people be successful with many parts of their lives. So yeah, that is the way it is. Just terrible advice in general from people who are not the people you should be listening to. Don't think the few people around this live stream really care about it too much, but I just think that, yeah, it's pretty difficult. Looking through a few last points here that I noted down. Yeah, again, dating apps versus real life. It's pretty, I think just online dating in general, unless you're in that small niche of guys who get a huge number of matches from women who are way less value than you could get in real life, and you're fine with smashing them, I guess, or having casual relations, just long-term relationship, and you're not really that willing to put in the effort to find someone who's going to be higher value, then I guess it works. But yeah, I have a video from a couple of years ago where the statistical data was, the research says that out of 10, both men or women, if they use apps, will pair up with someone who's 2 points out of 10 less attractive than they would in real life. So that's the way it is. If you're a guy of high value and use matchmaking, it's going to be way lower than just -2. It's going to be like -4, -5. We can get into that a little bit later on. So yeah, meeting in real life, but that means a bit more effort. You're going to have to probably think about your location. You're going to have to think about you as the product and raise your value. And you're going to have to learn how to communicate it, your Instagram or in person, your communication skills. But it is the way, as also my client who was married to the woman from Zaporizhia reminded me that it's worth putting the investment in. I mean, you don't want to marry the wrong person. So yeah, marriage might not be forever for most people nowadays, but it is a huge long-term investment, whether you get married or you decide to not involve the state in your relationship. Something that you should definitely get good advice on. Let's see. I was going to talk a little bit about, these matchmakers. I'm going to look at it from the point of view just marketing my comments tonight. Like now they're starting to use AI. One of my clients sent me clips from Heart Rocket, and they had some video using AI with, yeah. It's kind of interesting to see where this will all go. It was on Instagram, so I guess they don't have to put the disclaimer, because on YouTube, I think you have to put the disclaimer if you use AI in the videos, but AI slop is coming to matchmaking. So they're going to be spinning guys now an AI fantasy kind of relationship, at least in their marketing. No doubt they'll be competing. Like I now get ads actually, and a year ago it was for AI girlfriends, but it clearly looked like AI generated. It wasn't really that convincing, but I just found it amusing. Now it doesn't look exactly like a real human the way it's acting, but it's not far off it with the ads I get. So soon guys are going to want to have their virtual girlfriends, a certain number. They'll be having online conversations. It was something that was happening with these PPL sites, the paper letter sites. They were learning how to be the ideal girlfriend for guys even a few years ago, but that's just been accelerated. But anyways, coming back to the marketing, yeah, the AI stuff. I think, as I've said over the years, for me, most of this matchmaking, it works for guys who are a bit older, are open to a small age gap, and the women are kind of like probably in their 40s, definitely over 35. As women under the age of 35 who are somewhat attractive and somewhat mentally stable, like why would they go to matchmaker? Like, we approach women in general. Women basically screen through the options in general, right? For most people. Why would they be going to a matchmaker, especially when it involves immigration, unless immigration is the aim, right? So you got the green card girls, the girls that want to leave. So yeah, that's what I've seen. And I watched, I looked at Antoine's channel. It's one that I appeared on before, Sekou Emi. Yeah, it's in French. It's, yeah, so if you speak French, you can watch it. But I think now even you can probably see his voice. I mean, probably the subtitles in English as well. But I looked at his website, and the profiles that are there, it's like 92% of the women are over the age of 35 and up. So if that's indicated, I remember someone sent me Match Guarantee years ago, and there was also like, that was the main demographic, was like older than at least 30. But now it seems like, as I said in a live stream before, that all the matchmakers, it seems to be the same people as before, and they've all gotten 5-10 years older. So it seems like they're revising because they probably understand that age demographic the best. So it's like women basically over 40 want to meet a guy, maybe 50 at most. Because this Heart Rocket they said they have a 23% rule, which is like the maximum they will match a guy with is a woman who's 23% younger. So for me, being 47 would be 36. That is the maximum. So probably they would match me with someone in their 40s. Nothing wrong with that if you're open to it, but a guy who comes to the region is reasonably high value. If he wants to have a bigger age gap than that, say he's 50, yeah, he can have a 20-year age gap. It's just like age gap is not everything, obviously. There's some guys who want it because maybe they want to still have more children, and obviously the woman is like younger than 40 is going to be a lot easier, so it makes just more practical sense. But because we're attracted to youth also more as men than women are attracted to youth, if it also depends, is a super attractive 25-year-old you're interested in dating, or it's one who's not so attractive, who's overweight, which is rare here in this region. So there are a lot of factors that go into it. But yeah, you could have a 50% rule for guys who are over 40 in this region. If they come to the region and they work on themselves, create a social circle, understand the region quite well. And yeah, it's kind of odd that it's, but I guess that's the people they can really help. And actually they had some videos, because I watched their channel this week, this Heart Record, because basically on YouTube, it's the only matchmaking channel that seems to be doing reasonably well compared to before. Moldova was talking about that. First, it was weird that women, she was telling them not to wear oversized clothes. And actually, when I was sitting in the cafe in Odesa with my client who has the wife in Zaporizhia, a really attractive girl, probably about 25, came in wearing everything oversized. And I was thinking, women like this, yeah, of course they're going to get approached by men. It's actually good that they're not wearing very revealing clothes, because then every Tom, Dick, and Harry quite literally will be coming hitting on them. But then I realized I watched some of Luba's content in Russian, because she has her Instagram for the women that she wants to attract into her service in Russian. And yeah, then I understand she's talking about women who are in their 40s, basically, who are clueless, don't understand that, yeah, they're not finding men because they're basically dressed way too conservative, and they're not a hot 25-year-old. They're, they're already over 40. So they kind of got to show a little bit more cleavage in order to try to attract men at the last chance before the fertility window closes, and they really lose value on the dating market, I guess. But then I was actually in cafe on my own about a week ago in Odessa, and there was a woman who was a little bit older. She was probably, like Ben was talking about gym rats. This girl had an amazing figure. She was, I would say, yeah, at least 35, maybe even a bit older. Like really amazing figure. So she's obviously working out pretty hard. Large bust. She was wearing a low cut top, and guess what? She was hit on at least 4 times when we were sitting in the cafe, right? So it is what it is. Sexual dimorphism, men are attracted to these elements on women. But for me, yeah, would I be super interested in the girl who's dressing like that so provocatively, and every guy is kind of hitting her? Kind of seems like she wants a lot of attention. She did seem to be with some guy who came in later, and yeah, it's kind of funny because, yeah, he looked like a stereotypical post-Soviet hitman from the 90s films. So that was the kind of guy she was with. But yeah, it was this kind of an interesting observation that if that's the demographic trying to help and they have this 23% rule, I guess it's for matchmaking is really for guys in this kind of 45 to 55 year age range who are open to marrying a woman in her 40s. So if that's you, then yeah, I did all those videos with Yelena. We normally do one a year. Yeah, Antoine's content is interesting. I actually wonder from a marketing point of view if the fact he talks about interesting things like what's happening in Ukraine, a bit of geopolitics, whether that helps him with his business or it's because most matchmakers, their channels are so uninteresting if, from my point of view, and obviously I'm not the target demographic of their services, which was not the case 5 years ago when they were all based in Ukraine and yeah, they were talking about life here and other things. Now it's so, like the content is so boring for me to watch outside of trying to figure out the marketing. And yeah, this AI thing where they, like, it's one thing that the thumbnails are using, like even I have a thumbnail that's partly AI generated, right? So it doesn't break YouTube's rules to have a thumbnail that's done like that. But the thing is, if you're selling a service, like we will match you with women and you use women who look 25 and like a supermodel, and then in reality, the women that you can match with are in general over 40 and not looking like a supermodel, it's kind of a little bit odd to me. But I guess that's the way we're going. They'll soon be making videos with supermodels and claiming that's the matchmaking they're doing. But for me, it looked a little bit off point when I saw it was sent to me by a client earlier. But anyways, that's just something that's happening. Yeah, just thinking of those conversations I had with Philip back in the day when he was my client. He said that I should explain on this channel that the issue with the matchmaking is the quality of the matches. It's just so low. That was also his opinion compared to what you can do in real life if you invest in time. But guys, they think this is a value to them. Maybe they don't have any dates back in their home country. Maybe it's they have a fetish. They have this mythical Ukrainian traditional bride that was millions poured into this. You know, basically the idea is a bit of a scam. Like Ukrainian women in general are not traditional. They're less financially emancipated for sure, but that's about it, I would say, on the traditionality scale. Divorce is higher, birth rate is super low, sex before marriage is pretty common. I would say even sex at a young age in Ukraine, I don't really know much about it, but I saw the stats for Russia. The average age of losing virginity for girls was actually like lower than in Western Europe, I think. So yeah, it's just not, this region is not traditional in that sense. I think it's more conservative on average, yes, but it's not traditional. But yeah, that's what some guys get, you know. I watched the testimonial. The one thing I'm surprised is that this loveme.com, they still do some tours to Ukraine. I guess it's a foreign affairs, the company. And they had two guys on. One was 73. I guess if you're 73, you've lived a good life probably at this point. Why not come to Ukraine? And I understand if you're older, like you're in your 70s, maybe it's harder to invest the time and meet people, so he just wanted to come. But they had another guy who was like looked younger, like maybe his 40s, and they said, why do you like Ukrainian women? He said traditional values. And then he said, what else do you like about Ukrainian women? He said traditional values. So I was like, okay. This guy is definitely and he'd already been on one of their tours to Medellin. So I don't know, like it just looks like he has some crazy image in his head about the traditional ladies that, you know, I don't think is really the reality. And it's kind of a bit of a fetish. It's like one of my clients, he was Asian American and he was using a dating app when he was in Poland and Romania, where it's an Asian dating app. So it's basically in general for white European girls who are into K-pop, who want to date Asian guys, and the Asian guys want to date white European women. Now that's perfectly fine, but it's more or less a fetish app, right? It's like in the sense that it's so specific that, yeah, it's kind of, it is what it is. So I feel, from my point of view, a lot of this matchmaking with the marketing behind it is more a fetish phenomenon in general. But maybe it's also attracting a lot of guys who are, Anton also said something very disturbing, that he thinks that 25% of the guys who apply to his matchmaking service, because he runs it with his wife, his Ukrainian wife, are, in his opinion, probably predators looking for vulnerable, poor women to exploit, which is, yeah, if that's one of the motivations for guys to go there, that's pretty scary. They have that number of people. But I think a lot of them are just guys who have very little look back in their own country. Doesn't mean that they're bad guys necessarily at all. It's just that where they are isn't the spot for them, and they don't have many options, and they just maybe hope desperately that the Ukrainian women won't be as harsh on them and give them some options compared to women in their own country. But yeah, what are they really offering then? A passport, a green card to the US? That's a terrible long-term decision if that's the main motivation, because yeah, that would probably have a life expectancy on it as a relationship, and then yeah, she'll just find someone else when she's got the green card. And otherwise, yeah, they won't. Yeah, I think of course it can help. It can happen. It's not like a 0% chance for these guys. But I remember, yeah, back in the day, Joe had some live stream, and the 3 guys who were on it, they all said that they had 0 dating options back home. I think maybe he said one of them was successful, I don't remember, but the other 2, like one of the guys was way overweight as well. It's like, man, you got to sort this stuff out. Like, women here are not desperate. It's not a passport pro destination to come to Poland or Riga or to even to Ukraine in spite of the war and things been a bit cheaper. It's not like the women, maybe on a Filipino island, women are still like desperate in that sense, but in general they're not. So yeah, I wouldn't buy into that fantasy. If you are fresh to this content, definitely be aware of that what the reality is on the ground. And the guys who do the best, in my experience, like we've had this channel for many years, and like so many of the guys who came as clients or are consulting clients are now married in a long-term relationship, have kids in the region. I did have some guys who came, like Juan, who gave like the testimonial at the time. I didn't ask any of the guys ever for a testimonial afterwards, but from the marriage point of view, because it's never the main focus of this channel's content, it's more lifestyle. Yeah, there were a few guys who did that, and they only came on one trip. But in general, when I see the guys, especially who dated the models and are married to them, have families with them now, yeah, they came and they spent a good amount of time in the region, got to know people, built up a social circle. Doesn't mean you have to have all of those elements. You don't have to learn the local language, but all these things are going to help you just live a better life in general. And, you know, a long-term partner is an essential part of that. So let me see what other questions that have come in the meantime. Juan asked me, Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, are these good? I'm not a fan of Hungary to live in. I was there for a month because my friend gave me his apartment when the invasion happened. He was away in Brazil. So Angela and I spent a month in Budapest. Yeah, Angela definitely didn't want to live there because language is difficult. I mean, it's just different to the others I speak, so it would be a big investment. And of course, instead of Budapest, beautiful city center. So I think for a romantic trip with your girlfriend or wife, whatever, I think it's a great place. But living there or going as a single guy, no. Most of my friends who were single there were not so impressed. And I don't think I think just one of them ended up marrying a Hungarian. Czechia, I much prefer Prague to Budapest as a city. I almost moved to Prague. It was over a decade ago. So, yeah, I think that's a good spot, Prague. It has a lot of tourism. There's like an honest guide channel that gives good tourist advice and avoiding scammers. That's a great channel. Slovakia. Actually, the guy who was the consulting client last week, yeah, he likes girls from this like Central European region, like Czechia and Slovakia. Also, another thing I should say about this whole fetish like most of the marketing went into Ukrainian brides. At one point, it was actually into Russian brides, but then Ukraine became visa-free for Americans to go to, and Western Europeans. So then suddenly it started to change to just Ukrainians. But there is a difference culturally, definitely, between Ukraine and being, say, in Poland or Slovakia. It's definitely closer in culture, being in Central Europe, than it is here in Moldova or Ukraine. But the gap is closing all the time, as they're more and more European, I guess. But this client, he says he prefers it there because a lot of Ukrainians, it's just a little bit too extreme as a different. And definitely said Belarusians are Obviously, the further east to Russia. So it depends on like how different you want them to be. You're open to being culture. Maybe it's a better fit if they're from Slovakia. Again, on average, people are a little bit more conservative than they're going to be in Western Europe, but it's not huge, the difference. But yeah, I think Slovaks, if we're talking about Slovakia as a place, I think just Bratislava, I've always found it a very boring city, a boring capital. Much prefer Prague. But yeah, it's like Central Europe, real Central Europe in that sense. Could also be interesting for guys. But my preference has always been a little bit further east. All the places that Russia wants to invade, apparently, at some point. The places that I want to hang out in, I guess, unfortunately. Should I give maybe one last thing that was interesting a client sent me? Yeah, I said that I looked at what advice I give you, but I don't really want to encourage the matchmaking for everybody. I gave you the limited scope I think it can work. What you should do, nowadays it seems like many of these matchmakers, they have social media that's aimed at the women. It's normally going to be in Russian or Ukrainian, depending on what target they're aiming for. You should go and you should watch that content because it's very revealing about how they market guys like you to the women. What kind of women are they trying to attract? So yeah, I also notice the difference that the matchmakers that are based in Ukraine, like the women actually who run them, stayed in Ukraine, or the services based in Ukraine, they actually market to the women exclusively in Ukrainian. Whilst the ones that are outside tend to use Russian, which is an interesting difference. I think there's like still speaking in Russian is more common in the diaspora, the ones who left, than it is in the people who stayed in Ukraine. Because people stay in Ukraine are under Russian rockets every day. The national language of the country is Ukrainian, and Ukrainian is becoming more popular to speak, even in the parts that were maybe more historically Russian speaking in the past, but now it's bilingual, I would say. I wouldn't call Odesa Russian speaking. I think it's a bilingual city in everyday life. Obviously, there's only one national language in Ukraine, only one has official status as a national language, and that's Ukrainian. So I think what's interesting, if you watch the country, you see, are they appealing to gold diggers? Are they appealing to women who are 20 years of age and models? Well, none of them can. Like, that would be a red flag if that kind of woman was ever at a matchmaker. It means there's something going on that's dodgy. But it looks like almost like a human trafficking thing if she's going to be a mail order bride or whatever. Being slightly sarcastic when I say that, obviously, or facetious. I don't think everyone was ever really been trafficked by these matchmakers. But yeah, you get to see how they market you. It's interesting because I looked at Luba's for Heart Rocket, and yeah, she speaks all the time in Russian. The marketing is very clear that she's talking about meeting foreign men. Actually, they all seem to use the word foreign man. They didn't say Western in their marketing, which is kind of, maybe that's just the common thing. They said either Stranets or also in Ukrainian, Zemets. What else was there? Yeah, they also sell the idea of being, especially if they have a partner. Like Luba's like, oh, I have this partner, striker. He's kind of like marketing him. This is the result you can get. But yeah, it's definitely, she was telling the women to dress with more, showing more flesh, basically. Because yeah, but it's obviously aimed at women who are 40. I thought in the beginning she was talking about women who are younger and attractive. I was like, why is she telling them to dress more promiscuously, basically? But now I understand it's the women who no men pay attention to, basically, or few men who are focused on their career. Yeah, it's all, I mean, that advice is legitimate for those women, but yeah, unless you're interested in a woman who's probably not super attractive and in her 40s, because if she's not getting attention, then it's going to be very limited. But watch their content in general. Also think the fact that this difference between when they're in Ukraine and they're using Ukrainian, because they're appealing to actual Ukrainians, versus when they're outside and using Russian. Like, they're not going to be they're obviously not exclusively attracting Ukrainians anymore. And that's a big difference if you, in a long-term relationship for moving with visas, it's way easier if you're with a Ukrainian than if you're with a Kazakhstani. It's also a little bit an issue if you want to move them to where your home country, and definitely if they're Russian. Yeah, it's going to be a big issue. Yeah, my client sent me one other thing. Maybe this is a very long live stream. Maybe for those of you who are left on it, not super interesting. But I just thought there was a few lessons. Like, so he sent me their, I guess they have some internal, or maybe, I don't know where it was from. Was it from their Instagram or was it from their some other social media group? But they were marketing the women to the guy, saying, look, this is one of our new clients, right? So one other thing is, like, it's very easy to track people down nowadays with this technology, face recognition, everything. So basically they had circulated she was like early 30s, divorcee, because it was very easy to find her social media. Like, what's interesting is this woman she was actually from Belarus, and then was living in the US. So being a Belarusian, she was like, maybe, I think she's 33. We'll just say she's a 5, maybe she's lower than that, but in the US, because I had that video from a few years ago about the level of beauty, what's a 9 and 10 basically in Central and Eastern Europe. But really, at the time it was called Eastern Europe, but New Europe, we'll say. So countries like Ukraine, and then when you go further west, well, they gain a point or two, because, yeah, on average, women in this region are better looking than if you go to Germany, or if you go to Ireland, or if you go to the UK, and definitely if you go to the United States. So she's definitely a 7 in the US because of the difference, right, between the two. If you're a woman, it's just like men. First thing we look at is visuals. How beautiful is the woman? Not saying that's right or wrong. It's just what, in general, men do. It's not the only thing we look at, obviously, for a long-term relationship. You shouldn't pick someone purely on their aesthetic beauty. It's going to be not a good idea for a long-term relationship. But yeah, there's definitely a difference in where you are in the pecking order in terms of beauty if you're in Belarus or you're in the United States. So, like, my client, he sent me this and he said, well, what's her motivation to be there? Like, who brought her to the US? It was kind of interesting looking at her profile. She kind of undergraduated in Belarus, and then she moved to the US. She used an English-speaking last name on her professional profile. So I'll just presume she had an American husband. Now she's divorced. You could find her also under her maiden name on her other social media. And yeah, it was kind of, is this a good option? Like, there's no risk of a green card girl, because she already presumably got her green card. She's probably a US citizen. But then this illustrates one of the big problems with this matchmaking. If you were to take that girl, I don't know if they met on a matchmaking server. Maybe he's just an American maybe they even met in America. Maybe she found a way of going there. But it's more likely that she met some American guy, moved to the US, got her green card, probably naturalized as an American. Relationship didn't work out, probably because the incentive to be with him disappeared. Most divorces are instigated by women. So just looking at the probability, she would have ended it. So if you were to meet her now, well, then you don't have the issue of her being a green card girl, because she's already got her passport. So that's one thing. But now she's lived as we'll say a 7 out of 10 in the US, with so many guys willing to simp for her, like expectations of, like, she was living in a big city in the US. Yeah, is that someone that's a good idea, a good option? It's kind of interesting to ponder. Could be. But if you are, it's kind of odd, right? You have mainly these American guys who are then paying for an introduction to a woman who already lives in the US, who's obviously got lots of American men who are going to be interested in her. And these guys can't have that many amazing options where they are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be paying for the matchmaking. Unless they really have a fetish, they really want to meet a Belarusian or a Ukrainian. Yeah, I don't know. This woman's probably going to have super high expectations financially as well, because she has a lot of value relative. She's not a 25-year-old model. She's not 9 or 10. Even in the US, I mean, I thought it may be a 7. Maybe the photos were a bit flattering. She's heavily made up. It's the right angles. Maybe she's only reading a 6 in the US. I can't say for certain. But kind of interesting that now it's marketing women from that diaspora. So they're not doing the immigration plan because they've already achieved it. But now they're still looking for a matchmaker. But it's kind of a red flag to me. If a woman is still like reasonably attractive and she already lives in the US and what she's looking for an American husband, or she's looking to emigrate again, now she's already got a green card. It's kind of an interesting thing to ponder. Yeah, I would have a lot of reservations about someone like that. But yeah, you'd have to meet them to know. I just think that they've probably done the green card shenanigans already. Could be innocent, that it just didn't work out. Could be that that was kind of their plan all along, and now they're looking for a second schmuck to to emigrate somewhere else. Yeah, kind of interesting to see. Yeah, because also in Antoine's the CQME, he was talking that now a lot of the guys who come to him, they want a Ukrainian who already lives in their country. So it's mainly he's dealing with French clients or Canadian clients. They're less interested in a woman who's actually coming from Ukraine. Actually more interested in a Ukrainian woman who's living there because it's easier. She already has the green card. We'll say it's not going to be a green card in France. So yeah, interesting. I guess if I was living back in Ireland, would I go on a fetish app to say, to find, or online to try and find the few, well now I guess there's lots of Ukrainians out there, it probably wouldn't be so hard. What I would do is I would go to the community events for those, I mean if I'm interested in that nationality, whether you describe it as a fetish or just a preference, it's kind of semantic, the argument. I would go to the events of that community. I would even play a role. I would sponsor something. I would help the community, especially if it was Ukrainian with this war going on, organize help. And you will meet so many Ukrainians. Most of the people who left are women, disproportionately single women. It would probably be the best way to go about it. But I guess not everybody lives close to where there's a Ukrainian or a Belarusian community or wherever the nationality is. So yeah, that's what I'll say. Let's see what other questions we have. I will be honest, we are going to the party and to do pickup. I know you don't really like this. Is your covered? Yes, nightlife is also covered. It's my favorite places, basically. So yeah, just write me an email. Conor@conorklein.com is down below because people misspell my first name. Conor is Conor. I know there are different variations of it, but that's the original, the tried and trusted one. So yeah, I'll send you a link for both guys with a small discount then if you send me an email. If not, you can purchase them directly down below if you want to buy them individually. Yeah, also just from the marketing point of view, because I was looking at, I guess because of the AI, and also my client haven't sent me lots of stuff from them this week, and there's very little going on that's dynamic in this, other than that loveme.com video about their tour, which I'm still like, I find crazy that they're able to persuade guys to go on a romance tour with the war going on, but it is the only one. But other than that, there's nothing really interesting. For most of these matchmakers, unlike 5 years ago, as I said, I just don't think, I think we're not in the same niche at all anymore. There's not very little overlap. I'm kind of adjacent to it. But also they use the word Slavic quite a bit in their targeting the women. They were talking about Slavic culture a lot. There was very clearly one word all the time used in it. And from Luba, when I looked at the Russian language Instagram she has. But then when they're speaking English, they use lots of words. They use Ukrainian at times, they use Eastern European, they use Slavic. And I think that's something that, in general, it's hard to find a good word that's actually accurate, because Slavic is way too big. I mean, Poles are Slavs, North Macedonians are Slavs. Obviously, we're not talking about them. I think there's also big, now, growing chasm in terms of culture. I don't think Ukrainians and Russians should be put together in the same category. I think it's definitely if they're under 35. And this is basically what my channel, I guess, more focuses on. If you're interested in dating women under 35, it's probably, you're not really going to learn anything from these matchmakers. They're all older and they're dating women who are older, and that's fine. But yeah, like there isn't really the same feeling of a Slavic culture if you're Ukrainian and under 35 and Ukrainian speaking, as opposed to someone who's Russian speaking, maybe 50, maybe you still feel like, especially if they don't live in Ukraine under rocket attack every day, But yeah, common Slavic culture doesn't really exist. Like there's lots of ethnicities that are not Slavic in the region. Slavic is very broad. Serbs are Slav. Even Slovenes, I guess, are Slav. Like it's just too broad. But I guess it resonates maybe with that target audience that they were aiming for. Don't think it would really fly in Ukraine in 2026 if they had that based in Ukraine and there was advertising only in Russian and talking about Slavic culture all the time. Yeah, I think it's like a diaspora difference and maybe an age difference. I'm like, because I've said in the last live stream, or the 2 live streams ago, that like generations here, like if we're talking about the US or Ireland or UK, Germany, France, we talk about generations, kind of like 15-year gaps. But here in this region, because of the rapid societal change, it's kind of half that. Like if I look at Angela with, say, these women who are over 35, there's like a 7-year age gap at least. It's kind of like a generational difference. And then Angela down to girls who are probably 1920s, also like a generation, because the ones that are younger grew up with the war going on most of their life in some shape or form. And they're also, you know, so many of them have so much more access to things further west, social media. It just narrows borders, right? So, yeah, even I used to see that sometimes with Angela and 1 or 2 of my clients' girlfriends who were like maybe early 30s. This would have been a few years ago. So when Angela was like 25 and they were like 7 or 8 years older, there's like a big, like, it's like a generational difference. They don't feel this connection with people who are also Russian speaking from other parts. Just the culture is already diverged. So yeah, that's why I think the matchmakers that are based in Ukraine, they market to the women, it seems to me, exclusively in Ukrainian. And they're not talking about a Slavic culture or common Slavic culture or anything like that. It just doesn't fly with the societal changes in Ukraine on the ground. But that's something to be aware of if you are coming to Ukraine, or you're interested in the region and how society is changing. I think it's an important difference to be able to observe. Like, part of the Russian narrative for the war is that they're saving the Russian speakers. So guess what that does to people in Ukraine? That doesn't make them want to speak more Russian. It makes them want to speak less Russian. It's kind of an act of resistance, basically, to also stop speaking Russian to a certain extent. Not that you can, of course, still speak Russian in Ukraine if it's not illegal or something, but it's just less and less popular, less attractive. Yeah, the second language of Ukraine will soon be English. I think another 10 years, young people will learn English. Definitely in the west of Ukraine, for most of them, they'll speak better English than Russian for sure pretty soon. And I think that will be something that will be a trend. And it will be intergenerational. Like, there's going to be no rapprochement between Ukraine and Russia for probably in my lifetime. Maybe if I have Ukrainian kids or grandkids, then maybe my grandkids' time during their lifetime, there will be some sort of reconciliation, but I don't see it happening. So any more questions or comments? I've kind of given a long live stream because last week's I had to basically delete, and I'm not doing them as often anymore, so I kind of do them as more an omnibus edition. I should have given an update. Yes, I have finally produced something for this Ukrainian language program. I know it's taken a long time. I would have actually produced it today, but I will do it tomorrow. Actually, the first modules will be ready. So I will decide once I have them generated whether I send them to the guys who have invested. The ones, I think I might even send them to them all, but I'll definitely send it to the guys who were the beta testers finally. So that will be coming, and we'll be launching that very, very soon. So be prepared finally with this program. But basically I had to do it myself. Originally I was going to do it with my teacher, but yeah, she just didn't have the time at the end of the day. And now with AI, it helps a lot with me designing the program and the Ukrainian language and checking everything and with the prompts, but it still took me a good amount of time just to figure out how to use the AIs basically to do it and to prioritize it. I think that was the main thing. So if for some reason I did offer it until yesterday, I don't think I even turned off the link yet. I need to do it manually. Still final chance to join this program. We'll be starting the next couple of weeks. Once I get the feedback from the first modules and then I make any corrections, generate the last lessons, we're going to start with the live streams and give full access to my Speak Ukrainian Secrets program. We're going to learn basic Ukrainian. If you're interested, the price, do I know off the top of my head because I put it in euros. It's still, well, I still haven't turned off the link for the 25% discount. So I guess if you invest now, but when I turn it off, it will go to the full price. I think it's like the discount price it's 165 euros for the program. Anyways, write me an email if you're not on my mailing list, Conor@conorklein.com, and tell me you want it at least in the next day, we'll say, and then I'll turn it off. Let me just find what I said 25% discount. Final comments and questions. Well, I just look for what the extra price was here. Yeah, the sales price from when I turn off the discount will be 217 euros, and now it's 162 euros. So about 185 US dollars. So yeah, write me an email, Conor@conorklein.com. If you're on my mailing list, you already got the emails and those links. I still haven't turned them off, so I guess I will do so in the next 24 hours. But in any case, write me an email if you're interested. Do you have any final questions or comments for this evening? This has been an omnibus. I started this live stream at what time? 11 o'clock local time here in Moldova. It's now almost 2 a.m. So I've been on for basically 3 hours. I think the battery of my phone's going to die pretty soon. So let me know if you have a final comment or question. And otherwise, I will be signing off. I will be, bringing clients to Ukraine pretty soon. Probably going back to Kazakhstan also. And one client wants to go to Warsaw. So that's where I'll be going, the in-person experience. If you'd like to apply for it, whether it's to come to Ukraine or one of the alternatives that we ran through today. I see there was like some interest in Central Asia, some interest in the other countries in Central Europe, like Czechia, Hungary, Slovakia, as well as Ukraine. These guys are going to go to Odesa this summer. And obviously travel through Moldova. If you want to apply for the in-person immersion with me, Conor Klein, the New Europe Experience application form down below. And it is by application only. I don't take everybody, I screen everybody. I'd probably make a lot more money as a business if I just took everybody and put them on some standard tour, whatever, not even a romance tour, but just a travel tour. But it's a bespoke high-level service, so you get to access my wisdom, not just my encyclopedic knowledge, but also how to apply and build your dream lifestyle in this region. And you can do it on your own. You can watch these videos, get the free content, other content creators. There isn't so much, as I said, for this region, but where you can come and spend a lot of time figuring it out by yourself. I basically had to do that. There wasn't so much information available. I think in the last few years, basically, not just with helping guys, but also watching. At least 5 years ago, there was good content for this region. Not so much anymore. It's helped me develop a deeper understanding. But yeah, basically, if I had this possibility in some shape or form, either to the remote consulting with calls or an in-person experience, even better, obviously, I would have learned everything so much quicker. I wouldn't have gone to the wrong cities. That's why, this client, we had the consulting call this week, because he doesn't want to go to the wrong city, and because he's kind of traveled to a lot of these places, and he wanted to know, okay, which one is going to be the one I should focus on? How should I go about it? How do I build the social circle there? And for me, I didn't even appreciate the value of the social circle back in the day. I was coming to Ukraine, but also some of the other countries in the region, and was starting off from fresh every time. So inefficient, both for building long-term relationships in the region. Business-wise, I was just didn't understand so many of the opportunities that were here. Obviously, for relationships, if you going around as building nomads, it's not impossible, but it's not as good as having, the person who's going to be your mentor on the trip, who's going to have the connections, have a crew in a lot of the cities, knows all the best places to go to, has many years interacting with locals, whether it's meeting high-level guys, businessmen, or maybe the love of your life, or at least a fling for the evening it might turn out to be, but whatever, build up some romantic relationships. You're going to have me with you, be able to correct those things you're doing that might be, creating bottlenecks in how you interact and make social connections and build your own value. Actually, the guy moved to Moldova. He seems to be building the social circle reasonably quickly. As I said, it was out on Friday night because he invited me to this birthday party. And it was actually a good contact for me to meet his lawyer, because actually I might even recommend her in the future. So it was pretty good for networking. But yeah, he doesn't find it hard to talk to people. Already learned some Romanian as well. So, but yeah, there are other things we're discussing at lunch for the trip to Ukraine. He wants to go to Ukraine. He's not going to go there on his own, building no mates and trying to wander around Ukraine, figure everything out. He's going to come with me. So yeah, it just saves a lot of time, makes things just way better. A lot safer, obviously. You don't have to worry about getting scammed. That used to be a big issue. Or yeah, you have less issues with I guess, if we go to Ukraine with staying safe and stuff. At least you'll have the right apps on your phone for the error alerts. To start off, which my client, was the wife from Zaporizhia, did not have on his phone, which really surprised me. So there's an app called Error Alerts. Make sure you download it if you're coming to Ukraine. Most of you are going to go to other countries. The alternatives like Moldova. Moldova, I'm trying to think which country to have the most clients go to since 2022. It might have been actually Warsaw, because it was so many guys wanted to go in all of 2023 when I started making content there, and up until about mid 2024. Might be just slightly higher than the number of trips I've done to Chișinău and the number of trips I've done to Riga. And actually, when I think about it, it's probably very high, the number of trips I went to Almaty as well. It's kind of hard for me to know. But definitely in the last 2 years, so we'll say 2024 and 2025, yeah, it was, well, then I think it was Riga was number 1. And Chișinău maybe number 2. So if you're thinking of going to the others, also you can apply for the in-person immersion down below. And you will have an unforgettable week if we decide to come together in one of those cities. My recommendation for the guys open to Asia and Asians in general, that's still a little bit European, Almaty in Kazakhstan. And if you're into I guess you want to have the country that's probably the best for dating, in my opinion, that's going to be Latvia. So then it's going to be Riga, the leggy blondes, if you like model beauty and sophisticated European culture, then yeah, Riga is a great spot. But you really need to know the right places to go to and how to socialize there. All these dating coaches and pickup artists, they go there and they fail. They don't say they fail. They tell everybody online, don't go there. They're right about the weather is terrible, and that we can definitely agree on. But I think a lot of these guys who are dating coaches, they hang out with each other. They don't really build up the social connections in the region, and they don't really find out the best spots to go to as a result, unless they spend a lot of time there, which is what I said they don't. They all seem to retreat back to Warsaw. So I guess they kind of know where to go out in Warsaw or where to socialize, because they have maybe a community of other guys who are doing the same thing there. But when they go to, say, Riga or Tallinn, yeah, they don't invest the time into meeting the local people or stay long enough, so they just don't build up the critical mass to be successful. It's surprising. One of my clients was shocked when I told him, because he knew the influencer who was talking about his experience there, and he said, how can they think Warsaw is better than Riga? I was like, well, yeah, they didn't go to the same places we did, and they didn't socialize with the same people, and yeah, they didn't build up the connections. But to each their own. But the good thing is, it means that you don't have annoying day gamers pestering girls outside the train station in Riga. They just do it in Warsaw. Mark asked me, what was your old paid content about? Do you mean my online programs? So most of them were like for relocation, so moving to Ukraine. I also had dating content. So I had Slavic Seduction Secrets. I had Slavic Scam Buster Secrets, which was the first program I did, which is help guys avoid from being scammed. And then, yeah, it was clear after I made that actually most guys wanted just a more general course for helping them with planning a trip to the region and dealing with, the biggest issues in terms of dating and dating advice in the region because they were single guys. So I have that program. If you're interested, Mark, I'll write my email address here. And yeah, you can write me an email. We can discuss it. Or you can write me on Instagram. Just write me a message. My Instagram handle is it should be Conor Klein _ New Europe experience. I think it is on New Europe. I think that's my Instagram handle. You know what? I will put my Instagram here. I will copy and paste it into the chat so you can see it. Yeah, it's _ New Europe. So that is my, I guess, is what you refer to as my old paid content. If you want, you can be more specific, Mark, about what you're talking about. I think we talked last week. You were here in the chat as well, right? I think you wanted to reach out to me about consulting. So yeah, write me an email if you want to have a link to that. If you're on my mailing list, yeah, I offer access to those programs once or twice a year for the recordings, the on-demand video program from back in the day. Actually, today I was in a cafe just before I went to this meeting with my businessman friend. And a guy who was actually, I'd had a consulting call with, and he had invested in, I think, cyber succession security. He said he's, yeah, because he mentioned it. He said he's almost gone through it. He's just going to finish the last few parts of it. I gave him access to it. It's a good few months ago. It might even be a year ago, but I remember we had a call when I was in Tallinn last year. But yeah, he's another interesting case. It's kind of a trend I've seen in the region. He's actually from Moldova originally, but lived in Canada and was working, I think, in IT. And then he decided to move back because, yeah, he can work remotely. So I noticed one of the content creators, one of the few, I guess, that's still a diehard and still trying to pitch Warsaw. He now seems to be targeting, at least in his call to action, for his consulting services. He seems to be targeting Poles who are planning to move back to Poland. And yeah, it's interesting because he's like Asian American. And I wonder if Poles who want to move back to Poland relate to him. Maybe they do. But he seems to have stopped pitching it to guys who are more, I guess, what I would say right-wing populists, not conservatives, really. Even though a lot of them call themselves conservatives, they're more the MAGA, like the pro-Russian MAGA crowd. When I say MAGA, I mean this kind of more extreme wing. Not everybody who voted for Donald Trump in the elections. There are a lot of conservatives who did as well. And yeah, but he seems to stop that. Now he's focusing his pitch to Poles who want to move back to Poland. Kind of interesting. But anyways, this guy, he is actually Moldovan and moved back to Moldova. So yeah, it's interesting that, yeah, I mean, he related to me and invested in my advice. So I guess there is maybe this Asian American guy is not completely wrong because, yeah, I have one case that's similar. So that's food for thought for me. Maybe I need to be pitching it more to Ukrainians who want to move back to Ukraine, Latvians who want to move back to Latvia, Poles who want to move back to Poland. Maybe there is a bit of a market for it. But yeah, we were chatting about a few issues, and he also had access program. Let me see. Mark says, I don't know exactly because it's behind a paywall, but you said you had some older content that you don't promote anymore. That's what I was wondering, probably from years ago when I found this channel from 6 years. Yes, I made this program in 2020, I think was the first edition, but I updated it until after the invasion. So I think the last update was probably 2023 or 2024. Maybe it was even 2024. So yeah, I can give you access to it. If you're not on my mailing list and not got the emails, I can make you an offer. I'm not sure. You can have access to all those recordings if you want the description, because I don't think I have a page for it at the moment. So write me either on Instagram or by email there. And yeah, all that content is premium and you have access to full course. I think there's like There's like 7 modules in it. You can also, if you want Scambuster Secrets, that's also an option as well. Scambuster Secrets, the original program, it focused on not being scammed in the region, especially in a romantic situation, basically. And then you have Slavic Selection Secrets. I'll send you so I can get on your emails. Yeah, send me an email or write your email here in the chat, and but maybe you don't want everyone else to see it. Okay, fair enough. Send me an email and I'll add you to the list. And I'll send you the offers then if you weren't on my mailing list. There's also a link to join my mailing list. I have as a freebie, something of value for you in exchange for your email address down below. What did I put there? I put something new. Yeah, we got the playbook, right? I mean, I don't even see it there. Maybe I need to add it. Yes, for some reason I don't see it. Okay, I forgot to put the free offer. I guess it's on the, I put it on the settings, the default. So I guess it'll be in the new stuff. I'll add that now. If you want to join the mailing list as we speak. Okay, so Mark is going to email me. The rest of you still on the live stream, let me know your thoughts. Any final questions? We're almost up in 3 hours. Am I hitting a record? Is the audio good? I guess no one's complained about it. So without the error alerts, I turned them off on my phone as soon as I crossed the border. And yeah, maybe the lighting, is this a nicer lighting setup? If it is, maybe I regularly rent this apartment when I'm in Chișinău, so I'm friends with the landlord now. Oh, he's actually back tomorrow, so I'm actually gonna have dinner with him. There's a new Georgian restaurant nearby. So looking forward to that, some tasty Georgian food. Actually, my client, we were talking about the gourmet food that I should include in the vlogs. We're discussing like his favorite cuisines. Because he brought up a Noma Kaplas video where they went to Argentina. He'd been to the same restaurant. He said the cheese platter is amazing in it. So then I watched that particular vlog or videos just to understand what he was talking about. Maybe there's some inspiration I could get about filming similar things. And then we discussed it and he's like, yeah, but restaurants that he actually prefers as my client more are going to the best Arabian restaurant that we went to in Odesa, which is like local cuisine, like Moldovan cuisine, basically. It's the same. This best Arabian region is part of, it's the western part of Odesa Oblast, known as Buchak, and then here in Moldova, it's called Best Arabian Cuisine. We went to a Georgian restaurant, and he also loves Crimean Tatar cuisine. So he said he preferred that. He said the cheese platter was amazing in the place in Buenos Aires, but other than that, no, he prefers Odessa to go to these kind of restaurants. So again, where I've been filming already, I'll keep filming and that kind of, because I think it's more interesting, especially if you don't have those options where you're watching this video from, maybe, yeah, unless you're in New York City where you can get every sort of cuisine imaginable on the planet, I'm sure, then yeah, probably you're unfamiliar with the deliciousness of Georgian cuisine, of Crimean Tatar cuisine, best Arabian cuisine, more traditional Ukrainian cuisine. Yeah, pretty amazing. And we're in the breadbasket of Europe here in Ukraine and in Moldova. It's got amazing soil. They have the vineyards here. So the food and stuff, I should have maybe highlighted that as a reason to hang out in the region. Just think the food and the quality. Basically, the default here is organic. Yeah, it's pretty amazing for the culinary side of things. There are pluses and minuses. Another thing that came up in conversations, because also this guy who used to watch the channel a lot, who came up to me in Warsaw, and he was really, really adamant and a bit emotionally charged whenever I tell him or say in my live streams that Warsaw is being hyped up. It's a good fit for some guys, but in general, it's just creating a false image. And he was always a bit triggered. He was about it. And yeah, it was kind of, we had some interesting back and forth. I was thinking also, like, he has a Ukrainian girlfriend for a few years. Maybe he saw Warsaw, maybe rose-tinted glasses. It was good for him. He met his girlfriend there. But as a single guy, what you're looking for is going to be maybe a bit different than when you're in a relationship. So, because I heard someone else say something about, oh, the country that's going to be best fit for dating is probably not going to be the best fit for lifestyle. I think for these kind of guys who are only interested in coming to Poland or Ukraine just because they're chasing women, I mean, as long as they're not doing anything illegal, that's all fine. but it's a pretty superficial reason to be here. It's like you spend all your time in a place that you probably don't like. You probably don't like the locals. You probably don't like definitely the climate in the winter for most of them, and you don't like the local culture really. It's actually with one client we had this almost argument about it, because after a month or two, I told him, listen, I don't think this is the right region for you. I don't understand why you want to live in Poland. And he was so, upset and defensive about it. And afterwards, he actually moved to Berlin. And now he hates on Poland all the time, basically. And it's like, man, I told you this. I don't know why you're bringing it up now. But he had such a superficial interest in the country. And once the dating wasn't working out, then he got a little bit bitter. Ben says best food. Number 1, Georgian. Number 2, Mexican. Number 3, Thai. I agree with number 1. I'm just not, I mean, obviously eat everything that's good. I didn't really like Mexican when I was in Mexico. Hopefully it's improved, but I haven't been in Mexico for many years. Thailand, as long as you love eating really spicy stuff, which I do, then yeah, it's pretty good. Wouldn't put in my top 3, but kind of more in Asia, I eat Japanese first, then Korean, and overall I love Italian cuisine. Still a bit partial to French cuisine, but Georgian is way up there. Ukrainian. I wouldn't say the traditional cuisines in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, it's not that amazing. Same with Poland. It's kind of similar to Ukrainian, but there's only one traditional restaurant that I liked in Warsaw. It's called Stary Dom is the name. There's a good tip for you from my Warsaw guide that, I never really promoted very much because, in terms of the guides, the 2 that were by far the most popular were Ukraine and Moldova, like way more popular than all the others that I tested. So I didn't put as much time into the others afterwards in terms of updating them. The Kazakh guide I will actually finish with the next batch of trips to Kazakhstan, and I think I have pretty good intel already in the drafts, at least on the hospitality parts. So if you're actually interested in the Kazakhstan guide, I guess write me an email as well. I can send you a link and send you the draft already. Marcus, do they have all-you-can-eat buffets in that part of the world? All-you-can-eat, I have never seen anywhere in this region. Not sure. But just ordered a lot of great hearty Georgian, Ukrainian, or Crimean Tatar. Or what else? Other cuisines are we eating a lot of? Great seafood in Odesa as well. All right, I'm pretty much at 2:15 done with this live stream this evening. Again, lots of great links down below. Invest in the guides. There's been interest in that this evening on this live stream. Also in my online programs that are behind a paywall, the on-demand stuff. So I guess send me an email about it, like Marcus. Had consulting calls in the one very interesting one during the week. The guy actually, what age is he? He's like maybe 30, he was like late 30s, I think. And doing very well for himself financially, single, not going to make just going to a country only for dating as his priority, but wants a balance. And Riga looked very promising for him, especially when a date like really top tier women in terms of beauty, elegance, sophistication. I think that's the creme de la creme. Antoine and these, and maybe he watches this, maybe he doesn't because it's 3-hour one, maybe he doesn't at the time, but if he is watching it, he talks about like how Slavic, in his idea, Slavic means Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. Even though I think that definition is kind of losing value nowadays. It's being like the peak in terms of status, in terms of beauty. I think it's a little bit of us all living in our own bit of bubble. I don't think most people think like that. I don't think most men think like that. I think it's just that we're always around men who probably are interested in Ukrainian and at least aesthetically women from this region. But I think in terms of female beauty, especially model beauty, that catwalk model beauty, three, like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are where you have the highest concentration of that. Also amazing to obviously be in Moldova and Ukraine. Yeah, the cultures are all a bit different. So there's still a good bit of variety, even if everybody's European. And this is, you know, if we're going to say the collective West, this is the collective West. A lot of the marketing is also saying the West has fallen, all the women are ruined, and the Eastern European women are the, you know, the solution. But yeah, there are a lot of downsides, cultural differences, high divorce rate here, low fertility rate, lower than it is in Western Europe and North America. STDs, it's not a massive issue, but it is higher, like the AIDS rate in well, Russia. I don't think they even produce the stats anymore. But Ukraine is also for Europe the highest, I think. Usually because of drug use and it's spreading through that. Not that that's as big as an issue as obviously was before in terms of it being cured, but still something to think about. It's not a traditional society, and yeah, this region is part of the collective West, although that unity has been, yeah, with Trump's presidency, the second one, it's kind of definitely been weakened because Article 5 exists on the geopolitical, you know, scheme of things or not. But if we say there's a collective Western culture, also includes Moldova, also includes Latvia, includes Estonia, includes Ukraine, at least parts that are not occupied by the Moscow Empire at the moment. So yeah, those are things that just for a broader understanding of the general culture, yeah, it's important because there are differences, especially when as I said, I watch these matchmakers that are older when they're talking, they're over 35, they're Russian speaking. Yeah, it's not there's definitely a big generational difference if you're, you know, interested in hanging out with people under 35, better educated, trendier, wealthier, more successful. Like if you're here in Chișinău, like the cocktail bar I go to where I was earlier, like they're European. They're definitely not, hardly any of them are going to be pro-Russian, even if there are pro-Russian people who vote for pro-Russian parties here in Moldova. It's a minority. But yeah, they're probably not going to be the people that you hang out with, because the younger people, the more educated people, the people who probably speak English more. So if you don't speak Romanian Russian, they're going to be, in general, not all of them, but in general, going to be consider themselves European and not want to much to do with Moscow nowadays. So, you know, all these kind of interesting cultural differences that if you really want to be successful in the region, whether it's to relocate here and live your best life, and part of that can be obviously relationships, which is what I get most of the questions about. But going that extra mile and understanding all this stuff, it gives you an edge as well over the guys who just like buy into very superficial marketing that's just telling them what they want to hear. So Mark says he loves vegetarian Indian food. Did you see the question about vegetarian options? You can have buffets called a fourchette. The question about vegetarian, what about Kurt asks, what about options for vegetarian? Yeah, it's not the norm in the region, but obviously there are dishes without any meat in it. But vegetarian restaurants that are just purely vegetarian, not so heavily publicized or popular, I would say. Most people are carnivores. But it's like the fruit and veg here is amazing. It's like breadbasket of Europe, as I said. Like there's so much, like it's got the black soil, the natural produce is amazing. The default is organic. So in terms of natural produce, especially with all this stuff they do to the food in America, in particular, if you come to the States, it's going to be way, way better and more healthier. And yeah, you'll be slimmer and you don't have obesity around here to the same extent. Yeah, the food is just way better. My client who was here, his wife in Zaporizhia, even said that. He said he just hanging out in Ukraine, he loses a few kilos straight away. He's just eating healthier all the time. So even if it's not meat and it's not as maybe marketed as heavily, there is a vegetarian train, is it Vegano or something like that? I've eaten at it. That's quite successful in Ukraine. Definitely in Kyiv and in Odesa. I'm not sure if it's still in Odesa, but definitely in Kyiv it was. So that's what I say about the vegetarian options. It will be amazing in terms of the vegetables and the fruit and all that stuff when it's in season in Ukraine. Phenomenal, but it's not as heavily marketed or catered for as in, say, the US or Western Europe. All right, I think my battery's even going to die on my phone, so I'm going to end it there. Probably a record, potentially. Most vegetarians are actually pescatarians. Okay, good to know, says Ben. All right, I'm really going to wrap it up there. Have a great afternoon or morning or evening if you're middle of the night like it is here for me in Chișinău. Crazy Chișinău, the capital of Moldova. Trust you got a lot of value out of tonight's bumper long live stream. Let me know your thoughts if you're watching this on replay, and we will catch up on a video or a live stream. As I said, upcoming are going to be finally next month in March. We finally added up the 3 fashion show videos, so Riga, Almaty, and Chișinău. And I have the summer vlog from Chișinău. And if I go to Warsaw in the next month or two, it's still possible, then I will finally finish up the filming. Maybe that's going to be in May by the time I get it done for a Warsaw vlog that I started over 2 years ago, but I never finished. So all that great content. I'll also have more vodcast episodes. I'm actually going to deal with that tomorrow when I wake up after I finally iterate this first few modules of the Ukrainian language program. All this great stuff coming very soon. So I was going to say do pobacenia, but we're not in Odesa moment tonight. I'm going to say la revedere, which is goodbye in Romanian from Chișinău, Moldova, and catch you very soon on another live stream, wherever that happens to be from. Ciao, ciao.